Hello everyone and welcome again to the season finale of the Committee Reads. I am your host Kaiju X, and with me right now I have Grayshot151 and Joe. And today we are tackling the penultimate KWC, the one you guys have been long waiting for, the one we've made jokes about at his expense, with the author right here live as a predetermined video can be. This is Match 164, Zilla and Kiru versus Megalon, Gigan, Monster X, and Orga, by Tyler Treeshock. Continued for Match 151. So go back to the start of the season, listen to that, and then just listen to everything from there.
I still love the fact I got that match for Grayshot 151, Match 151. Oh, so perfect.
Yes. It's not like you were the leader and had the ability to take advantage of that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Definitely not.
Damn.
Demonic eyes stared at Nick in the empty void as it revealed itself to be Gauss. Nick's eyes widened with terror and dashed away from the flying terror. Oh, terror used twice. There we go. The sound of the beast flapping its wings caused Nick to glance back, watching the menace close the distance between the pair, merely to strike a large form. Nick shook off the impact and looked up in horror. It was not an obstruction, it was a body. Zilla lay in front of him, a large hole through his head from a sonic ray. With nowhere to go.
Yay!
somewhere John Wayne is silently happy.
With nowhere to go, Nick turned around to merely to see the Gauss observing him, deciding the best way to kill its prey. Then another scream alerted the Gauss as well as Nick that someone else was inside the abyss. The scientist looked in the pitch-black void to his left to see Audrey's lone figure. The giant fiend dashed toward her, while Nick sprinted with his arms helplessly stretched to grab her. As the beast closed its maw around the reporter, Nick screamed with terror, causing the world to dissolve and a new one to appear. Nick jettisoned from his bed and scanned the room for any signs of the Gauss, Audrey, or Zilla. His heart pounded, and his head felt extremely light, but these symptoms he knew all too well. The scientist grabbed a tiny black box from his dresser and opened it to reveal something that brought a smile to his face, even as his mind still raced with panic. With a few calm breaths, the event ended, and Nick placed the small box back on his dresser. "Glad this thing finally has a use," he commented before he laid back down in his bed. "I'm sorry, Joe, it was a dream, it wasn't real."
Damn.
Nick moaned as he wandered into Heat headquarters. His vision was blurry, his hands shaking, and his head pounding, but all the symptoms diminished as he took a deep breath and exited the elevator. Inside the heart of the facility, he found Mendel, Monique, and Randy already up in addition to working on their assorted tasks. "And I thought I sleep in late," Randy joked as he watched Nick slowly make his way toward the coffee maker. "I had a bad night," Nick moaned as he acquired his coffee and then sat at his computer to drink. "Neighbors are still playing music. The only connection between the songs that wakes me up every time." "What is this?" Randy inquired. "The third time this week you have used the same excuse." "Seems like it," Mendel responded in his usual congested tone. And if they're that bad, don't you have Audrey's apartment? You can always stay over at my place if you wanted to. I think I misread something. I don't know.
No, that's right. Mendel was offering for him to stay at his place. It's like, oh, don't you have Audrey's, and you can always stay at my place. You know, trying to be friendly. I
trying to be bro.
We could play solitaire. You know, we switch turns.
He would play solitaire, wouldn't he? Nick looked away from Mendel as he processed his statement, then gulped down his drink. "I'm fine, but thank you. Honestly, haven't seen her much as of late." Monique raised an eyebrow at the comment and walked closer to Nick. "And this music, is it the cause of this distance too?" Didn't realize we were playing 20 questions, Nick lamented as he stood and walked to grab more coffee, but changing topics to more important matters. Has Elsie improved? I checked on her yesterday, and she's still recovering from pneumonia, Mendel replied. With regular medication, I can't see her being sick too much longer. You just love the fact that you actually have a reason to check up on her, don't you? Randy inquired of Mendel. Mendel blushed before countering. I'm just being a good friend and want her to have company. Which reminds me, Mendel proclaimed. Elsie asked me to pick up her breakfast, so I'll be seeing you all later. Did you imagine her saying this, or did she actually ask because they are two different things? Randy questioned, but Mendel either did not hear him or just ignored him as he left. He has no sense of humor, Randy joked before asking aloud. So, Monique, I've been meaning to ask how your trip was. The intern waited for a reply, but none came. He looked around the room to find that she had disappeared. Where'd you go? Randy asked, only to look at Nick for answers, but the scientist just raised his shoulder in response and took a sip of his coffee. Mendel walked up the stairs to Elsie's door. He had acquired Starbucks premium coffee and one pastry for each of them. Randy might have been right about Elsie not asking him to pick up breakfast, but the Mendel thought. Yes, the Mendel.
Whoa.
The Mendel. Welcome, Nagoda.
Thought it would be a nice.
Nagoda, do you want your own Mendel?
Sponsored.
What was that?
Do you want your own Mendel sponsored by Starbucks?
Does anybody want a Mendel sponsored by Starbucks?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, Starbucks is selling Mendels now. They'll bring you your coffee, your pastries, everything.
Everything.
Even your mom.
But the Mendel thought it would be a nice surprise for her. He thought about how this would help to impress his crush as he knocked on the door, only for it to creak open. That's strange, Mendel murmured before he shouted, Elsie, are you here? With no reply and curiosity overcoming him, Mendel entered the residence. After setting down his breakfast surprise, Mendel walked into Elsie's family room to find it an utter mess. Books were scattered about, with tissues covering nearly everyone. What? The sight caused Mendel to recoil with disgust. Yeah, Mendel moaned as he inspected the cluttered room. A slight creaking from another room caused Mendel to instantly turn around, as well as slowly move toward the sound's origin. Ugh. Elsie, is that you? I thought you would like breakfast and the door was open. As he cautiously entered the room where the noise had come from, Mendel felt relief and sorrow when he found no one. An empty bedroom, the only thing greeting his curious gaze. I guess she left and forgot to lock the door, Mendel sadly stated to himself. With no reason to stay any longer, Mendel turned around to leave, only to see the muzzle of an irregular gun. You will come with me, the man who was holding the weapon stated. Mendel looked around the room in panic to see three other men along with Elsie, who appeared unconsciously hung over one of the men's shoulders. The engineer mumbled a few sounds before he fainted and hit the ground with a large thud. I think that's the wrong fainted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That is the wrong fainted, Gray Shot.
Yeah, because he, he's in such a delirious state. How would he know?
I mean, first he dodged the soldiers, and then he hit the ground with a large thud, thus rendering himself unconscious. Oh, never mind. It fits with this character perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. He fainted to the side and smacked into the ground.
I love that headcanon. All right.
Yeah, he tried to attack. He tried to attack the guys, and then he tripped and fell.
Which, to be fair, would not be out of character.
Not in the slightest.
Take him as well, ordered the mysterious intruder with the gun before he, along with his team, left Elsie's home. Once we get these two back to the ship, our next stop is Heat headquarters, the man stated to his team as they made their way silently through the building. After finishing his task on the Seeker, Nick entered the main office of Heat headquarters, only to find Randy still on his computer but watching videos. "Don't you have any work you could be doing?" Nick inquired as he investigated what Randy was watching. "All finished, F.A. Now just watching my favorite show," Randy countered. "You might like it, actually. Mendel binged the first 8 seasons last weekend." Holy hell. Nick didn't ask what it was considering it had people in different colored armor bobbing their heads up and down, some type of CGI programming. "What about Nigel?"
Is that
Nick?
Power Rangers?
I think so.
It's red versus blue.
Oh. Duh. Red versus blue.
Damn.
Did you know that Red versus Blue was really Toho distributed? I'm kidding.
No. The funny thing is, this really dates it because I think it's up to its 17th season right now, and this just listed the 8.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
you're totally right.
So, is this getting is the mention of Red versus Blue getting taken down in the special edition?
Gosh darn it!
Because that's not Toho. Because that's not Toho affiliated.
I guess we'll have to do the same for Mario Kart in match 296.
Wait,
Just
what?
to be safe.
Anyway. What about Nigel? Nick questioned. Who was I? Mendel? Anyway. Already done. He's in the Heat Seeker with my custom new modification. What now? New speaker to make him sound like Elvis? Nick asked before Randy retorted, "Please, I don't repeat performances. Just, don't shake him." Nick just shook his head, deciding the less he knew the better, and was about to start to work on his computer when the elevator started its ascent. Mendel was rejected, or Monique is back from her newest mission, Randy joked before he got up and walked toward the elevator. "My guess is that our lovely agent is back." Nick smirked from Randy's usual humor before the elevator door reached the level and opened its doors to reveal no one. Both men looked inside before Randy proclaimed, "I guess it was a glitch." Nick, paranoia on his brain, backed out slowly. "What's the problem, F.A.?" Randy comically asked Nick as he looked at his boss. Randy's natural smile then suddenly disappeared, and his eyes widened before the intern raised his hand over his head in response to what he noticed behind Nick. Realizing what had happened, Nick put his hands on his head, turned around, and backed into the elevator with Randy to see what was behind him. 4 men with strange guns were now aiming their weapons at the duo. The sight prompted Randy to ask, "Is there any way this is just a huge misunderstanding?" One of the men, larger and holding the largest weapon of the 4, stepped forward as well as announced, "Are you two Randy Hernandez and Nico Totopoulos?" "Yes, but I go by Nick," the scientist answered before the man pulled out a small strange device. "I want you two to say, 'Elsie, we are all right. Do what they say into this device, and we promise to make your deaths quick,'" ordered the commanding intruder. Probably leave out that last part. I know it's meant to make him sound threatening, but you also want to be practical about it. Anyway, we already have one motivator. Your cooperation is not necessary. "Is there an option B we could do instead?" Randy inquired. In response to Randy's comment, the man punched the intern in the gut, causing him to fall in the elevator to his knees. Nick helped Randy back to his feet,
Damn.
but the intern, like in most cases, showed his inability to keep his mouth shut. So was that option B? Just checking," Randy proclaimed as he recovered to his feet. "If so, I'll take another. Been hit worse by a special someone I know." Another fist struck Randy across the face. The intern bounced off the back of the elevator, yet refused to fall. "So, we good now. I've got a show to watch, and is about to get to the part where the badass agents kick the crap out of 4 idiots." Annoyed and tired of waiting, the man angrily stated, "Considering you two are unwilling to comply, that leaves us with just eliminating you two." "Hold on, I don't remember that in your demands," Randy countered. "Did you change option A, or did you—" "Enough! We shall start with you first, since you are the more resistant of the two of you, the man said, directing his words at the intern. Hey, you shoot me and you'll have to deal with the G-Man. The Z-Man. Now amused, the group's leader retorted. Zilla, you mean? Yeah, him, Randy confirmed before he looked over at Nick. Man, I hate that they changed his name. Not only is that a loss of pride, but a loss of some awesome nicknames. Randy, I think we have more pressing issues than names, wouldn't you agree? Nick countered. Silence! The man ordered, pointing the gun. Your creature is being dealt with as we speak, and since you two are not going to do as I ask, then my men shall have to dispose of you. The leader then walked away and yelled, Kill them! The other soldiers aimed their guns, and right as the men were about to shoot, a small device rolled over to the feet of the three men. All three of the intruders looked down in confusion at the device until a familiar female voice screamed, Shut the door! Nick scanned the elevator, and after finding the emergency seal button, the scientist pressed it during the distraction. The elevator's vertical door slammed shut before a loud bang occurred on the opposite side. Nick let out a sigh of relief and then looked at Randy. How'd you know about Monique? Randy's body remained still, his mouth open, before he grabbed the back of his head. What if I told you, F.A., I didn't... What the heck? Oh, I didn't, right. The flashbang disorganized all four of the intruders before the French agent made her move. The agent rammed one individual, sending the intruder flying out a near window. With one down, Monique spun and struck another dazed intruder with a spin kick to the head. Oof. The individual's head struck a series of beakers, causing him to scream in pain as glass shards punctured his face. As Monique turned to face the other two, she noticed one of them running for cover as the largest intruder aimed his weapon at her. Monique dashed forward, barely dodging as a red energy ball as it zipped by her head and spun again. Her left elbow collided with the individual's bald head. Her left arm released a blade, and her right arm aimed the laser gun at the man she just struck toward the individual's screaming teammate. The leader pulled the trigger from the impact, silencing the man on the ground. As the blade Monique threw hit the back of the runner's head. The leader pushed Monique away and raised his right arm to fire, only to discover the weapon was now gone. Two laser blasts struck the figure's knees, and the leader fell to the ground in agony before he noticed one of his associates' guns in front of him. As he reached for the weapon, Monique's foot crushed his hand before she picked up the other weapon and aimed it at his head. Who are you? Monique calmly asked the intruder as she continued pressing her heel on the man's hand. The man.
What are you?
What am I? What are you? Whoops. Completely misread that. It's W.H. The man angrily stared at her before he lifted his arm up with incredible strength and knocked Monique off her feet. After falling to the ground, Monique aimed the two strange weapons and fired one shot each. The two bolts blasted the top of the intruder's head off, causing the rest of his head to crack down the center, revealing a strange non-human being. The French agent stared with disgust at the dead figure until movement in the back of the facility caught her eye. Adrenaline pumping with lightning-fast reflexes, Monique aimed her guns at where the movement had come from, only to find Nick as well as Randy exiting the elevator. What are you two doing up here? Monique angrily questioned as she recovered to her feet. We thought you would need help? Nick responded before he, in addition to Randy, then noticed three dead intruders, and I appeared to be wrong. Santo de Dio! Santo de Dios! Randy commented before he moved closer to examine the bodies. How'd you figure they weren't human? Monique quickly responded. I did not until the weapon fired. Then I was sure. So, what exactly is our head case? Randy asked before Nick responded. It's an exilian. A exilian, I'm sorry. Precisely, Monique commented as she inspected the other dead attackers. Heh. Heh, not ringing bells. not ringing bells? What? It should be not ringing any bells? Oh, whatever. What do we do to these guys again? I only recall us stopping one global invasion, Randy questioned as he scratched his head in an attempt to remember. They attacked the planet when we were still dealing with Cameron Winter, and by the time we got back, it was over. Or, by the time we got back, it was over? Oh, not bad. Nick responded as he helped Monique move the bodies. They really didn't invade, but raid a few cities. Randy still continued scratching his head. We got a negative press because they replicated Zilla, Nick clarified to no avail. I was sued for damage in Australia. Randy kept thinking until he jumped and shouted, "Oh, I got it! Cameron was trying to control a slug thing, so the G-Man fought a lobster and then teamed up with an ape, and I think there was more." Oh, there's the Match 83 reference.
Indeed.
That would be the incident, Nick stated with sarcasm. But I doubt he did this. He did this since he's in jail and isn't an Exilian. If he was, that might explain the superiority complex. So back to the aliens. Why did they want us dead if we never picked a fight with them? Randy inquired as he refocused on the dead aliens in the room. Unless, do you think the Leviathans put a hit on us? They didn't want us dead, but to talk into a voice recorder that we were alive for Elsie, Nick replied. Unfortunately, that means they have Elsie captive somewhere, and maybe even Mendel, since they said they already have one motivator. I will contact Hicks and tell him of our uninvited guests, Nick commented before he looked at Randy and ordered, I want you to get eyes on Zilla. Our guest said he was being taken care of, so find out if he's acting strange or if there's anything abnormal in his den. Randy nodded before he hurried over to his computer as Monique went to the elevator. Where are you going? Nick curiously inquired as his cell phone began to ring. I'll require some answers. I left one alive. Nick tilted his head before Monique pointed in his direction. The scientist followed the invisible line until he looked at the broken window. That's one way to do it, I guess. Pass.
Okay. What do you mean they failed? X yelled to the officials from his command room in the Exilian ship orbiting the Earth. Our agents recovered the person of interest as well as someone to keep her in line, and after dropping them off here, they were sent on their second task, an Exilian official noted. They have not checked back, which means they've either been eliminated or discovered by the Earthlings. X's fury diminished as rational thought overcame him before he ordered, if they have failed, then we must launch now while we still have the element of surprise. Send our new asset from Zootopia to destroy what our agents failed to do. I also want us to move to the human city of New York and deploy everything we have just to secure it immediately. But sir, interrupted an Exilian, we've not acquired what we have needed to make the state useful. The humans still possess many defenses left in the area. The creature from New York is still alive, and we gave word that Megalon was owned to be used for excavation purposes. X just stared at the Exilian before he silently walked over to him. The Kaiser looked into the Exilian's eyes before asking, So you would consider my actions poor? The Exilian remained silent, but that did little to change X's mind. The Kaiser raised his hand, electricity dancing around his fingers, before unleashing a blast of pure energy on the Exilian. The strike was sudden yet powerful, and killed the alien instantly. As the corpse struck the floor, every other Exilian became rigid, with respect in addition to fear. Does anyone else disagree with my order? X inquired. With no one moving, the Kaiser then proclaimed, Then move, as we have a city to conquer. Major Anthony Hicks from his office in Washington, D.C., looked at the 52-page report he had just finished about the incident in the Pacific. Damn how I hate these things, Hicks stated, before his phone started ringing. Wanting to get some rest and go home, the Major ignored the call until he realized the number. Hello, Nick. That trick helping out, or... Hicks, we have a major problem developing in New York, Hicks interrupted over the phone, causing Hicks to sigh. A severe migraine then came over the Major as he heard the bad news. I think I almost prefer giving you more advice, Hicks warily noted. I just finished the paperwork from what happened a week ago, and have not slept much since, so what's the problem now, Totopoulos? To get straight to the point, Major, we have a possible Exilian invasion occurring in New York, Nick bluntly explained. Major Hicks stayed silent as he absorbed what details the scientist had said fully until he asked with a foul mood gone. Details. A team of Exilians confessed to kidnapping Elsie in addition to Mendel before trying to kill me, Nick replied in a serious tone. Sure that the scientist was telling the truth, Hicks stated, I will tell my superiors and get all military bases on alert, but without proof, I can't do much. Do you have any physical evidence I can pass along? Nick looked at the 3 dead Exilians and heard the scream of the one outside before he explained, 3 bodies and 1 captive sufficient, Major? That'll be more than enough. Just get, Hicks replied before the line went dead. Nick stared at the phone and then tried to call the Major back, only to be knocked off his feet by a massive tremor. What was that? Nick inquired as he lifted himself up. Randy and Nick looked out of the closet window to see a massive eruption of water, followed by the reveal of a giant roach-like creature on the opposite shoreline. The massive insect, realizing he was on the wrong side of the river, started moving across the bay toward Heat headquarters. You always got to hate that. When you have a target and you realize you woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
We're going to need a lot of bug spray, Randy commented before Nick yelled, We need to go. Randy, call Zilla. I'll grab us some equipment. We won't be able to outrun it, but we might be able to throttle past it in the Heat Seeker. Meet up at the ship in 1 minute. Go. What about Monique? Randy retorted. She's probably already at the Seeker, Nick yelled as he ran for the armory. Megalon stared at his target with his large bulbous eyes. Its people had led him to the Exilians like how they had borrowed Gigan all those years ago.
Borrowed Gigan.
Borrowed, yes. Though orders were orders in its mind, and who told it what to do was of no difference to the dim-witted Utopian god. As it closed in what it had to destroy, a loud repetitive cry started playing around the insect. Confused at what was happening, Megalon stopped moving and looked around for what was making the noise. Seeing no threat, Megalon continued until he finally reached Heat headquarters. Nick, Monique, and Randy all prepped the Heat Seeker to move at full throttle, only for Megalon to block their escape route. We're trapped, Nick proclaimed as he took control of the mobile vessel's controls. All 3 of them then watched as Megalon raised his massive arms to smash Heat headquarters. As the insect readied to crush the building, a massive tremor occurred and a familiar roar filled the air. Monique, Nick, in addition to Randy, then realized what was truly happening when Megalon was rammed by a familiar figure into the bay. All right, the cavalry has arrived, Randy shouted. Hold on, Nick yelled as he roared the Seeker's engines to life. The vessel flew out of the building and away from the fighting duo that had moved their fight next to Heat headquarters. Zilla had heard the calls and had come from the ocean, where it had been feeding, only to find a large intruder about to crush its adopted father. With an unmatched fury, Zilla had sent Megalon stumbling onto dry land, though the insect now knew he had a sparring partner and took a fighting stance as he awaited for Zilla to attack. Megalon waited only a second before Zilla was back on the attack. The lizard chomped down on the god's shoulder, but a powerful swing with its arm sent Zilla sliding into some local structures. Covered in a massive dust cloud, Zilla burrowed as Megalon started discharging lightning bolts into the cloud. As the debris settled, Megalon searched the area for Zilla only to discover fire along with large piles of rubble where the lizard had been. Megalon screeched into the air, thinking it had won, only for green fire to engulf its being. The insect slowly backed away from the reptilian flamethrower, using its metal arms to take the full force of the attack, as Zilla exited the ground and continued his flame breath. To stop Zilla's assault, Megalon fired 2 napalm bombs over the green ray and detonated the bombs around Zilla. Slightly stunned, Zilla ended his ray, allowing Megalon to tunnel under the earth. After putting out the fire with a powerful roar, Zilla returned his attention to Megalon only to discover his enemy gone. The lizard searched the area to see where Megalon had disappeared, but the ground shook, attracting its full attention. Zilla jumped out of the way as the ground underneath him caved in before catching a glimpse of Megalon. The insect then disappeared under the earth before it repeated the action multiple times against his foe, each time with Zilla showing Megalon how agile it was. Tired of dodging and wanting to go on the offensive, Zilla rapidly dug into the ground. Adept at digging under the earth, Zilla dug at full speed toward Megalon's position, only for the insect to burrow past the lizard at high speed. The drill slashed the reptile's left side, causing blood to leak from the wound. Zilla, realizing he was facing an opponent that was even quicker than he was under the earth, tried to follow the insect by using the Megalon's own tunnels, but it was hopeless as Megalon dug past Zilla multiple times. With severely poor aim, the lizard took no arm from Megalon's attacks until a close encounter with Megalon's arm drills deepened the gash on his left side. The lizard bellowed in agony from the hit and decided to try a different tactic. Zilla immediately started digging downward, cutting through the terrain with ease, with Megalon right on his tail. For the first time in his life, Zilla knew he had been outdone in his element. The only way to win this was to bring Megalon somewhere where he would have an advantage, and that place was his home. Zilla dug as fast as he could through the earth toward his destination, while Megalon drilled at incredible speed directly behind the lizard. As Megalon was about to impact him, Zilla burst through the ceiling of his den before landing safely on the ground below. Megalon burst through the ceiling at full speed as well, only to slam into the ground with his head. Megalon lifted himself up as he tried to figure out where he had fallen, merely for Zilla to slam the bug against the wall. Megalon screeched with pain before the lizard started swiping the insect's face with his claws. After a painful claw to the insect's eye, a massive bolt of electricity discharged from Megalon's horn impacted Zilla. The lizard bellowed in anguish before Megalon smacked Zilla's chest with his arm. Ribs cracked from the impact, which sent Zilla flying into the opposing wall. Both monsters slowly stood up from the opposing sides of the den, but Zilla shuddered as he stood. He was growing tired. His wounds were starting to take hold, and Zilla could feel himself slowing. Megalon, on the other hand, had wounds, but it showed no signs of stopping, an advantage the insect unintentionally possessed due to being an unintelligent brute. These factors, though, were not enough to stop Zilla from dashing toward Megalon. Megalon charged as well, simply for Zilla to swipe the insect with his tail. Megalon stumbled, though it did not fall, only to counter by swinging one of his metal arms right into Zilla's head. Zilla skidded across the den from the strike, and after recovering, struggled to remain standing. His vision had become blurry, and he could barely keep himself up. Megalon assisted his foe by pinning the lizard against the wall with his right metal arm. Zilla used all his strength he could muster in his arms to push Megalon's metal arm so it would not crush his windpipe. Megalon, while pushing the one arm closer to Zilla, retracted his left arm to jab Zilla's head and permanently finish the lizard off. Zilla watched as Megalon prepared to finish him off. Even with certain death facing him, Zilla still would not accept his fate and channeled all the flames he could muster into his mouth. Megalon propelled the jab at full force, only for Zilla to unleash a powerful green heat ray. Not at Megalon, but at the ceiling above. The green flash in the dark room blinded Megalon long enough for gravity to affect the unstable ceiling. Massive chunks of rock as well as debris started falling, in addition to impacting both monsters. Megalon readied to drill his way out of the forming death trap until a massive boulder fell on his head. The insect stood motionless a few moments until a few more rocks caused him to fall to the ground unconscious. Zilla quickly crawled into a nearby pool of water to the ocean, only for the cavern to collapse on him as well. With little oxygen in the water and his body under extreme duress, Zilla, like Megalon, fell into unconsciousness. Pass.
After watching Zilla, in addition to Megalon, disappear under the earth, Nick settled... Nick settled the Heat Seeker in an abandoned port to discuss his team's next move. Randy, can you call in Hicks? Nick asked, considering that his phone had no service. Randy hurried to the nearest computer on board the vessel, and after a minute, the intern replied, "Everything is offline. There's nothing for me to connect to. There's no Wi-Fi, no satellites, nothing." "Could someone be jamming us?" Monique asked. "Definitely, and it's not just us. They're jamming the entire city and maybe more," Randy commented, before he continued to work on the computer. "So the Exilians have kidnapped Elsie as well as Mandel, sent Megalon to finish us off, and have now blocked the entire city of communications," Nick proclaimed, as he thought about their situation aloud. "I thought Mega Thingy belongs to Oceantopia." "Damn, bro, you got the whole squad laughing with that one." Randy inquired, only for Monique to reply, "Seatopia might have given them the creature, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and all of humanity is their enemy. Invasion is most likely their next step, and it will probably be very soon," Nick stated as a massive shadow enveloped the Heat Seeker. Randy moved from his computer to look outside, only to watch a massive round sphere, which was blocking the sun, slowly descend from the sky. Correction, Hefe. I think it's just started. It's the game sphere.
Yeah, except it's the ultimate version.
The Exilian mothership stopped it.
Virgin.
God bless.
The Exilian mothership stopped its ascent over the Empire State Building as tens of thousands of people stared with horror at the sight. Then, like a beehive, thousands of Exilian fighters started pouring out of the sphere before beginning their attack on the city. Smoke, fire along with laser blasts filled the air as the fighters instantly took control of the airspace and began their attack on the streets of New York. 3 smaller Exilian UFOs that were attached to the mothership, Alpha, Beta, as well as Gamma, also detached and moved toward the massive bridges around the city. The ship used their teleportation rays to remove the structures before they teleported them into the bay and surrounding rivers. X and a few other Exilians of lower rank from the Kaiser's command room watched in satisfaction as New York, one of the greatest cities in the world, became a Exilian fortress. How long until we have full control of this pitiful city that our prize resides under? X questioned as he watched happily as the city was sieged. The Exilian leader in secondary command rose from his spot and announced, "We have control of the air and are now hitting major targets of interest as we speak. Our UFOs are destroying all major structures and shipping vessels around the bay before they begin clearing all the debris from the roadways in the city. Lastly, we shall deploy our monsters in addition to our ground forces once the city is completely in our grasp, which should be about 20 Earth minutes until we reach total dominance over the area." Good. X stated with a grim smile before he asked another official, "Have our guests awakened yet?" "No," the Exilian replied. "Well, what are you waiting for?" X snapped. Our entire invasion rests on our hostage, so awaken her so she can begin her work." Gosh. "Yes, sir," responded the Exilian before he ran out of the room. With that dilemma resolved, X returned his attention to the screens to watch the horror being inflicted on humankind. Elsie slowly opened her eyes as she awoke from her unconscious Nick. As she weakly stood up, the biologist scanned the small room she was in. It was a perfect cube. No distinction on any wall except for a clear metallic barrier that kept her inside, and her last discovery was that she had a roommate. A roommate that she was both glad, in addition to annoyed to see. That person was Mandel Craven. Rise and shine. Elsie stated as she started shaking Mandel to get him to awaken. 5 more minutes, Mandel moaned until he finally opened his eyes. A flashback of what had happened in Elsie's apartment caused him to jump to his feet in fear, only for him to realize his surroundings. "Where are we? Why are we here? Why are you here? What's going?" rambled Mandel before Elsie interrupted and said, "Easy there, Mandel. Going crazy isn't going to help us yet." Mandel then focused his attention on Elsie before asking her, "Are you okay?" "Fine, all things considering," Elsie stated as she studied the cell she was in. "Though the last thing I remember is making breakfast and then a major headache. What about you?" Mandel's face went blank before he replied in a nasally tone, "I was on my way to visit you when a guy, actually 4 guys, jumped out. I tried finding them, but I was outnumbered and they knocked me out." "Uh-huh."
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, so that means that was the right fainted from earlier, if he tried fighting them.
Yeah, exactly. That it's like what you think you do, but what you actually do, right? Like he thought he fainted left, but in fact he just fainted.
Yeah. Wow, past Great Shot out-thought me.
Oh, no, just give it a sec.
Okay, fair enough.
This already doesn't make sense.
It would if you were here.
I am here, and it still doesn't make sense.
Damn. Uh-huh. Elsie skeptically answered before the barrier behind them suddenly opened, only to reveal two men in black outfits with guns. "You too shall come with us," ordered one of the men. A sense of bravery came over Mandel as he got in front of his crush and replied, "We're not going anywhere." The men interrupted the scientist by aiming their strange-looking guns at his head, which caused Mandel to then continue, "Anywhere without us thanking you for these gracious living conditions." "A compliment. Nice strategy," Else whispered as she, along with her teammate, started walking with the guard in front as well as behind them. Moving through the hallways, Elsie slowly realized that the place they were being held was not a man-made construct. Their trip stopped suddenly, though, as the guard opened the door before he said, "Get inside now, the both of you." Elsie, in addition to Mandel, stepped into the room, which had a massive amount of science equipment. Some types the duo recognized, while others made them stare with wonder as well as curiosity. "What is this place?" Elsie asked, but the guards remained silent. Before Elsie could anything else, another older gentleman with no hair entered the room. By his clothing, she could tell he was of high rank. The other two men stood to attention as the official ready to speak. "Hello, Dr. Chapman and Dr. Mandel, and welcome to your new place of work," proclaimed the mysterious man. "So as long as you comply with us, you will not be harmed. Do you understand?" Elsie looked wide-eyed at him before she examined her surroundings and sarcastically asked, "So what are you? Exilian, Helak, Mysterian, Leviathan, Cetopian, or another extraterrestrial race I have not mentioned?" The official stared at her, dumbfounded, until she explained, Not really new to the whole alien abduction thing." The official smiled before he replied, "Well, my dear, you are on an Exilian ship, and I am X2, but that is all I can say. Miss Chapman, my species needs your skills in biology, and it is a request that you cannot deny. Trust me, I know this scenario well." Elsie responded in her usual comical tone. "If you need a cybernetic creature from the corpse of another monster, I am somewhat an expert. A sense of humor and those skills will not be needed, only your biological knowledge," swiftly responded the Exilian. "Your task is to combine the in-base with another set of cells without causing any alteration to the original cell's overall traits. The cells have been resistant to our methods, and most of our scientists died in the prior invasion, so a replacement was needed. You, Miss Chapman, are our second choice." "Great. Prom all over again." Damn.
Relatable.
Mandel looked at Elsie and then at the Exilian before he asked, "So why do you need me?" "You were
Ascertained
ascertained by accident at her residence after you fainted, but you will be of great help as an assistant as well as a motivator if she does not cooperate. The Exilian replied as he turned around to walk out of the room. So what type of cells do I have to deal with? Elsie inquired to the high-ranking Exilian. G cells. The Exilian shouted as he continued walking away before he said, and good luck, Doctor, considering you have 1 day to finish it. The Exilian then disappeared out the door, and the 2 guards took positions at the corners of the door. So, what are we going to do? Mandel inquired as he started looking at the equipment around the room. Unfortunately, exactly what they said we should do. Unfortunately, exactly what they said we should do, unless you want to face off against the 2 guards in the room. Considering you took on 4, no problem. Elsie commented before wide-eyeing Mandel. I felt a cyborg with minimal assistance, so perfecting a few cells should be take. The 2 guards then looked at Mandel as if he was about to become a grave threat before the mechanical science replied, I think I will pass. Nick, along with Randy, watched in horror as the Exilian fighters, along with Exilian UFOs, assaulted New York with no mercy. A few hours into the assault, and the aliens show no sign of slowing. Whereas the Army, Navy, Air Force, or any force for that matter, what about the Space Force? Randy yelled as he watched helplessly as his home city was sieged. Nick, without taking his eyes off the invasion, said, most likely overrun as well as destroyed by Exilian forces. Any operational unit will be headed to the outskirts of the city to deploy a defensive perimeter, if I had to guess. We must consider this part of a global invasion. As the scientist finished speaking, Monique exited the heat seeker. So what are the Exilians here for? Nick inquired as Monique entered the pier. Our guest does not know much about the large picture, but he knows a few details, Monique responded before she sat down, not blinking an eye at the chaos in the background. The Exilians will be staying a while and will be putting down infantry to protect, clear out, and hold the city. For how long is uncertain. What is not is that they want something under the city. What do you mean, clear out? Nick inquired with fear in his eyes. Monique looked at the scientist before exhaling in addition to responding, eliminating all inhabitants of the city or using them for cattle. We also stated that Elsie and Mandel are on board the mothership in addition to the position of his ship. Nick shook his head at all the information revealed as he concocted a plan. Well, if you 2 are up for it, I think I have a plan to throw a major wrench in our invaders' plans, Nick commented as he studied the mothership. Randy's face lit up before he said, So what's the plan, Hefe? A little payback sounds good to me. You and Monique head to the fighter and prep it for a flight to infiltrate the mothership. You might need Nigel to hack into its systems, and luckily Mandel had him on the Seekers, so take him along with any supplies you might need. I will head into the city, specifically toward the Channel 8 news building. Once I make sure the structure is secure and Audrey is okay, I will clear the rooftop, set down flares. That way, after you 2 grab Mandel, as well as Elsie, you will have a safe place to go that isn't filled with invaders. After giving his small speech, Nick waited for any type of backlash or negative response, only for Monique to ask one question. What about our guest? Tie him up and lock him in the vessel unless you warrant him a grave threat. We might need him later. Monique nodded before she headed back into the heat seeker to gather supplies as well as arms. Nick and Randy then followed her into the vessel before they started grabbing supplies for themselves. After retrieving one of the strongest guns on board the heat seeker, the laser that his team had used to kill dragmas before they grew, Nick exited the vessel and started his voyage inland. As he began his journey, Randy shouted, "This better be considered overtime, Hefe." A smile appeared on Nick's face as he heard Randy's joke, but decided not to reply. They both needed the good feeling to last as they readied to enter the war zone of New York Pass.
Yes, the war zone of New York Pass. Alright, so who's up next?
Nagoda, you want to take over?
Hello? Is this-
Hey, Nagoda. Are you ready to take over?
Where are we at?
The sound of gunfire and rockets.
Okay, good. My internet went out for a bit there, so
Okay.
I was trying to
Damn.
reconnect. Okay. The sound of gunfire and rockets firing filled the area as Hicks' chopper landed on a football field near Henry Hudson Bridge. "What's going on?" Hicks asked the pilot. "Exilians are trying to destroy the bridge, but our forces are giving them a run for their money." Give me a moment. I need to go check on the dog.
Oh.
I mean,
Oh.
yeah, anytime you have an Exilian invasion, you gotta check on the dogs. That's the only part of it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and don't forget X is furry now.
X is
Oh,
furry.
yeah.
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 You put it.
I forgot to joke about that.
Yeah. Way earlier, you had X's furry
Alright.
instead of X's fury.
Gotcha.
All right, so
Can't believe X is cringe now.
you mean he wasn't?
His-
Anyways, multiple
okay.
tents lined the field, and Hicks went straight to the command tent so he can assist with the current operation. After a few wrong guesses, Hicks finally found the correct tent, which held a police officer as well as a military officer. The unknown military officer turned around only to ask, "Who are you, sir?" "Major Anthony Hicks, at your service," Hicks stated as he searched the man's uniform for his rank, only for the officer to reply, "Sorry, sir, but it seems you are now in charge. Captain Jeremy Dolish at your service." "A sit rep would be helpful then, Captain." "Okay, well, first off, I should also introduce you to Officer Hanks. Hanks, right?
Yeah, Hanks.
Okay.
Okay, Hanks," stated Jeremy as he
Hank
pointed to
Hill.
the...
Fun fact: these people are based off my friends. It's a combination of names and such.
Ah. So you do that too, I see.
Yes.
Fair
Stated
enough.
Jeremy as he pointed to the police officer. "He has helped us with the use of local buildings in addition to gathering supplies for our units, as well as the local displaced civilians. Civilians are fleeing in droves over the bride, and we can't afford to lose it." Hanks went to shake the major's hand, only for Hicks to say, "As much as I like introductions, what is happening, Captain?" "Sorry, sir," Jeremy apologetically stated before he said, "The Exilians, as you may know, have been destroying all the bridges to the island. We were ordered to hold the Broadway Bridge along with the Henry Hudson Bridge. We were close to a military base, which happened to house some Bradley linebackers, as well as some Humvee Avengers, so we have kept the sky clear for the most part. The Exilian fighters are now on the retreat for now, and the local police, along with a few military units under my command, have kept the bridges clear in case Exilian infantry arrive. They have been rumored to have taken garrisons in the main city, although we haven't seen them yet. Also, we are running low on ammo for both guns plus the anti-air rockets. I have tried to call in reinforcements, but I have only received one message, and it is said that some major assistance was on its way from Detroit. Details unknown. That was a few hours ago, and nothing has come yet. Oh, and lastly, reports are coming in that all other bridges have fallen to the island, and the Exilians are bringing one of those big ships here to teleport the last bridges. Our bridges to hell. That's the situation, Major." "Okay, Captain. I will take command from here," Hicks ordered before he yelled, I want you to pull all anti-air into cover around the Henry Hudson Bridge. Tell them to load every rocket they have left and wait until I give the order to fire. Understood, Captain? Yes, sir, the captain replied before he moved to the radio to transmit the orders. 10 minutes passed, and the gunfire that had filled the skies had dissipated. The airspace was clear only then for the Exilian UFO Alpha to appear in the skyline. The UFO first moved over the Broadway Bridge before teleporting it up to the ship, and then back down as rubble. You know, this is really reminding me of what are their names? It's Alien Absolute Zero guys from Battle in Outer Space.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. The Natarl.
I forget their name. Yeah, there we go, the Natarls, because they also did this tactic, and it worked.
You know, this reminds me of an episode of Transformers.
Good or bad?
Yeah.
Damn.
What? Oh, give me a moment. Oh, sorry about that. I was just being asked about what food I wanted. With no resistance, UFO Alpha moved over the Henry Hudson Bridge. A massive white light started building at its front tip before it picked up on a transmission from below. It was from Hicks, who yelled over his radio, "Open fire!" Every rocket that could be ignited rocketed into the sky before impacting the focal point of the lights. Hicks, from the Kennedy Knights football field and through his binoculars, watched as the smoke from the impact zone dissipated to reveal no damage to the vessel. "Damn!" Hicks yelled before he then ordered, "Retreat! I say that again! Retreat! Over!" Hicks shouted over the radio as the ship's white focal light reappeared. As if things could not get any worse, at least 20 Exilian fighters appeared on the sides of the UFO and began firing at the defenseless units from the UFO's altitude. Hicks, still on the field, started ordering all those around him to move, only to receive a message over his radio. Major Hicks, can you respond, over? You asked for reinforcements, and I will be at your location in T-minus 30 seconds, over, stated the mysterious female voice over the radio.
Who could this be?
This is Hicks. I can't keep my voices straight.
That's alright.
This is Hicks, the major replied. No use moving in. The Exilians have overrun my position, and my men are in full retreat. I can't hold the bridge. Repeat, I can't hold the bridge. I will be there shortly to engage. Tell your men to hold the ground with whatever they have left, ordered the unknown person. What are your reinforcements made of? Skeptically inquired Hicks, only for the voice to respond. Single unit from the Japanese Self-Defense Force, Major. Before Hicks could ask what the Japanese Self-Defense Force was doing on American soil, a massive tremor caused the military officer to fall to the ground. As Hicks rolled onto his back, he slowly opened his eyes to notice the Exilian fighters attacking something behind the stadium. Hicks tilted his head back to see what it was, only to discover a giant Godzilla-like robot. The soldier jumped to his feet before watching as it opened its chest cavity. The major then looked back at the Exilians to see their response, only to watch as the aliens' craft retreated toward New York City. A massive blue sphere erupted from the silver machine and impacted the UFO along with a couple fighters that had accidentally flown too close. Well, there goes half his power right there. The massive Exilian ship turned blue before falling, shattering as well as disappearing in the distance. Hicks just stared at the location of the UFO shattering in disbelief before he heard the female voice over the radio. I think I just stopped their advances, Major, explained the voice over the radio. Your men should be fine for the moment. Snapping out of his shocks, Hicks then asked, Who is this, and what the hell are you piloting? This is Self-Defense Force Lieutenant Akane Yashiro, piloting Kiryu, Akane replied over the radio. Excited in addition to glad to have reinforcements, Hicks happily stated, Good job, Lieutenant, but you need to work on your timing.
If I may interject real quick, that was a really cool bit. You know what? I'm glad Kiryu opens with absolute zero. That's great.
Yep. It hits something. That's good.
Hooray!
For once.
It hit what it intended to hit. It just can't hit monsters, apparently.
Monsters are protected by plot armor.
Mm-hmm. Sir, we have achieved total air superiority. Our forces have destroyed all military bases that could harm the city in a 50-mile range. The waterways surrounding the city are now filled with debris from our UFOs, so there's no chance of an amphibious assault. And lastly, our ground forces are now being deployed to clear out the buildings, subways, as well as the surrounding landscape. Exclaimed X... What?
I was gonna say, who wants to start playing the Curb Your Enthusiasm music?
Exclaimed X2, the bald Exilian second in command to X. Should I give the order to release our 2 creatures from their containment? X smiled before he turned to the high-ranked Exilian and said, Deploy our monsters, but what about the deity we borrowed? It's still missing, sir, the Exilian replied. No word since it engaged Zilla. Godzilla is here off the coast, exclaimed the suddenly worried X as he turned in shock. X2 shook his head no before stating, No, this monster is similar to Godzilla, but because of its smaller size, weak durability, along with its cowardliness when first found, mankind named it Zilla. Megalon should have no problem killing it, considering the original Godzilla killed the creature in a few seconds after coming in contact with the original invasion's duplicate. The old Kaiser called it a tuna head because of its sole instinct to eat fish. An elite team of specialists follows the creature around, and they have shown to be trouble, considering they stopped the Leviathans.
And just like that, every screenwriter muttered the word fuck.
X laughed at the lizard's nickname before returning his attention to watching New York burn. Well, when Megalon surfaces, send him to the front lines with the other creatures to defend the city, X ordered. This team you mentioned might be impressive, but they will not pose us any harm. The Leviathan's poor tactics with their creatures caused their failure, not the human race. Lastly, once our UFOs cleared the main streets of the city for our infantry, as well as destroyed the last bridges, tell them to begin the excavation immediately. Once we unearth it, the creature will be our newest weapon against mankind, and nothing will be able to kill it. What if it fights Godzilla? Inquired the second in command. X turned his attention to the official and angrily yelled, It was nothing but a dumb beast when it fought Godzilla. Under our power, this miserable planet will fall to the Then I shall become ruler of this miserable rock and reunite this city with the Exilian Empire. The failure of our great ancestors, my predecessor, and all those on Planet X shall be amended.
Nice job.
Good job, yeah.
Of course, my Kaiser. Your brilliance knows no bounds, X2 stated humbly before he exited the commander's room to relay the orders. X returned his gaze on the burning city, only for the official to re-enter the room. I thought I gave you orders to report, X proclaimed in annoyance. You did, but the new report states the humans shot down one of our UFOs, the Exilian stated to his leader. X turned around and inquired, How have the humans done this? It seems that a mechanical monster similar to that of Godzilla appeared and instantly disintegrated it. Our forces have remained hesitant about engaging the machine, for fear of more losses to our limited fighters. Another Godzilla clone? X questioned in fury. So the humans have built another Mechagodzilla, have they? Send Gigan to hold off this cyborg at the city limit. Tell Monster X to defend the inner city. Lastly, inform our UFOs to begin excavation immediately. Understood, X2 responded before he ran out. Wait, were those the same person?
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was like
there's an
some other
X2.
Exilian.
No, there is an X2, yeah.
No, I mean I thought like a third Exilian walked in.
No, I think
Oh.
it's just been the two the entire time.
Yeah, it's in the
You
two.
think
Ah.
you'd make us a chart telling us who's who?
It's basically, if you want an idea of where it's just giant control room, and there's the X2 is just the second in command.
Ah, all right.
Yeah, so X1 is based on regulator, even though it's inferred he's not regulator, and then X2 is technically closer to bald guy. So
It's not X2 from Star Wars?
no.
No.
Damn.
I think I mentioned it here somewhere, but I think I made note that it's his brother.
Oh,
Ah,
spoilers.
Damn.
Yes.
understood. X2 respond. Wait, what was that?
I was gonna say he has a bit of an inferiority complex. Not sure if you also caught that. It must be genetic.
X2 responded before he ran out of the room so he would not become the target of X's newest rage. A response he learned well for being the new Kaiser's right-hand Exilian for so long. Nick, after checking to see if the street was clear in the darkness of night, slowly moved down the abandoned road. His senses on full alert, Nick searched for any signs of Exilians, only to discover the horror the Exilians unleashed on the city. The streets were clear, but the walkways were littered with the burnt remains of cars, debris from the buildings, in addition to corpses. Then, as he reached the end of the block, while blocking his sight from the gruesome scenes, the scientist checked his phone to see it past the 8th hour in the afternoon. At this rate, I should be there in less than 2 hours, Nick assured himself, but then stopped as he felt small tremors. As the quake's magnitude increased with every second, Nick ducked into a nearby Starbucks at the corner of the street and hid in the back of the business.
What's with this match at Starbucks?
This match was sponsored by Starbucks.
Just trying to
don't
list
know, it's like
realistic
Power
places.
Rangers.
No, red and blue. Red versus blue. Oh, right. No, Power Rangers was Krispy Kreme.
Yep,
Yeah.
everyone's sponsored by some sort of food.
How much money did Starbucks give you for this great shot?
Not enough.
Damn.
Curiosity overcoming him, Nick peeked over the counter to discover 2 large skeletal feet, and then a massive group of Exilian soldiers at the massive unknown creature's side. The monster stopped its advance as the soldiers spread out and started looking into the surrounding buildings, including the Starbucks. After hearing the sound of gunfire from the neighboring structures, Nick then contemplated his next move as the Exilians moved into the establishment. Outnumbered, outgunned, and with no chance of winning, Nick stayed completely still as well as quiet as he waited for the aliens to leave. Every sound they made increasing his heart rate. As the footsteps grew closer to the counter, Nick readied his weapon to fire. Then, as one of the aliens ordered, "Check the back!" Nick decided to act. The scientist jumped to his feet and aimed his energy weapon at the closest Exilian he could find. Without saying a word, Nick fired upon the surprised trio of Exilians. The surprise caught all 3 off guard, allowing him to silence the trio. Yet the sudden sound of dozens of footsteps alerted Nick he wasn't an unknown entity any longer. "I guess it's time to leave," Nick exclaimed as he ran into the back of the shop and out the back door into a corresponding alleyway.
You think
As he ran for his life through
You think Nick got a coffee before then?
I mean,
A nice
it is-
I mean, he was in the
coffee
shop
and a
he probably
pastry.
made his own. I mean, if I were in that situation, I would have eaten as much as I could in the Starbucks.
I want some Starbucks now.
Mm. Where was I at?
As he ran.
Yeah,
As he ran for his life through the alley, and with the Exilians surely almost through the Starbucks, the scientist searched for an escape until he noticed a subway entrance at the end of the alley. Now he's going to Subway?
Man,
A showcase of this.
let me say this real quick. With the Exilian surely almost through the Starbucks, that is now a thing.
We can have Starbucks in the KBC now. Holy Kino.
I think Tom referenced where his buddy worked, right? Like it was a realistic place his buddy worked.
It was on top of the whatchamacallit tower, the needle tower, space needle, whatever.
Yes, fine with referencing this kind of thing.
Is it related to Toho? Anyway, it should have been Dunkin' Donuts because that appeared in King of the Monsters.
I should have done Krispy Kreme, even though this didn't come out at that time. I think this was a year before that movie.
Yeah,
but
a year
still.
before. Yep.
What you really should have done was a Dr. Pepper factory.
In New York. Oh yes, let me just throw down to the Dr. Pepper factory
No,
in Manhattan.
Snickers. You do Snickers.
Is there Snickers? I will say the locations like for the bridges and stuff were all real life locations.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
Ooh.
Google Maps, my
Anyways,
friend.
Yes.
the scientist searched for an escape until he noticed a subway entrance at the end of the alley. A showcase of the speed he developed working on heat, or luck, considering it was night. Nick entered the subway without the exilian spotting him, quickly making himself a $5 footlong. Flickering light from a backup generator kept the station somewhat lit as Nick rushed down its multiple flights of stairs. The scientist reached the subway platform quickly, but then exhaled vigorously as he regained his breath. After subsiding his breathing, Nick lifted his head up to catch a glimpse of the subway's underground map. Nick scanned the map and discovered a subway entrance close to the Channel 8 news station. A smirk appeared on his face before he heard the sounds of footsteps coming down the stairs of the subway platform. With the exilian still on his tail, Nick jumped down onto the tracks and ran into the darkness before ducking into a maintenance room. As soon as the exilians left, he would be on his way. It was only a matter of time. Past. Oh wait, he'll be back in 10 minutes. You want me to? I'll read until he gets back.
All right.
So, why would they park their ship so close to Heat headquarters? Randy asked Monique as the two of them, along with Nigel, arrived at their base using the cover of night to evade the invaders. Accessible exit points, Monique commented as she pointed at a nearby warehouse. Give me a moment.
Nagoda?
Test. Is this thing working?
Yeah, it's working.
There we go. The vessel resides there. It's about time, Randy proclaimed as he stressed. I could sure use a rest. Ignoring the intern's remark, Monique slowly made her way to the far-off building. As they moved closer, its features became clear. It was an old, abandoned warehouse, which explained to Randy why the aliens would choose it to hide their ship. Monique tried to open the front door, only for the doors to not budge. The French agent then backed up before kicking the rusted door open wide. Did I ever mention how much I enjoy it when you do things like that? Randy sweetly questioned to Monique, merely for her to reply, Unfortunately, you never stop. As the three made their way into the structure, they walked into the middle of the warehouse to discover an empty void along with the exilian ship. Randy scanned the ship in amazement before he said, Nice ride, but I wonder how they got it in here. The intern looked at Monique for an answer, only to see her pointing at the ceiling, or specifically, the massive hole in it. Monique then sarcastically said, I believe that is the entrance point, no? Randy smirked in amusement before he edged his way to the ship with Nigel, and used Mendel's robot to begin hacking into the vessel's systems. Massive waves of unknown code appeared on Nigel's screen, filling Randy with wonder as well as dread. The intern moaned as he watched the code overflow the screen. Can you access? That's not the voice I was looking for. I'll just talk normally. Can you access it? Monique asked, worried about the mission's integrity. Yeah, replied an annoyed Randy. Unfortunately, I'm going to need Nigel to translate all this code for me. How long then? I can't do Monique's voice. The French agent inquired as she looked around the warehouse for anything else of significant importance. Randy looked at the code, then explained. Maybe 3 hours, until translations are done, and then 1 minute to override everything else. Unless you know how to write Exilian, which would totally rock my mind. Monique wide-eyed Randy before she said, I shall keep watch while you work. So I really can call you my angel now then, Randy noted, causing Monique to shake her head with disgust. Hearing a beep off Nigel, Randy looked down at the massive waves of code and exhaled before he sarcastically said, Unless you would like to stay here by my side. The intern looked to observe her reaction, simply to find that she had disappeared. I have to learn how she does that. What is she, Batwoman? Randy remarked before he began hacking into the Exilian fighter. Is he back?
A three-headed dragon, Hicks remarked. The Major turned to Akane, who stood a few feet away in his command tent. The small feature held nothing more than a desk, a table, and the two yet. It was all that the duo needed to prepare for the next day. Didn't hear about that one. Well, thank God it showed up and put you close by. Akane nodded and turned her attention to the table between the two. On the representation of New York, it showed the three-pronged assault to be launched in the morning against the Exilian threat. Yes, it seems that was the only fortunate thing to happen today. Let us hope it continues into tomorrow. Hicks chuckled before he pulled out a small canteen of alcohol. The Major motioned it towards Akane, who refused the drink. Good on you for not drinking and driving. Before he took a sip of himself. Well, just keep your sights on the Exilians I'm sure you have, and breathe about our other base that resides in New York. In New York.
New York, the greatest city in the world.
Connie looked up from the map. Yes, but is this monster why you're not worried about tomorrow? No, the worry is why I drink, and it's not Zilla. Well, not completely, but there's a group inside the city I would put my life on, especially in a hell like this. Are you not worried it has been taking control, or this team may be dead? Hicks nodded. Yup, and they might be, but we might also die tomorrow. I've seen them weather every type of storm you can imagine. Well, almost everyone. God, I hope everyone except for Akane dies. Horror happens throughout our lives, sometimes without us. Akane took a deep, almost painful breath, sometimes by our own hands, but it's the choice we make that after that truly matter. Hicks raised an eyebrow at the statement. Yeah, well, the guy in charge of it goes by Tata. He's been through hell to save those around him. He and I went through a special type of hell recently. Unlike the other times, though, this hell won't let him be. Hicks took another sip of his drink while Akane looked back at her map. No one can fight forever. This is a time where we all need to rest. Get some rest then, Lieutenant. Oh, and try not to step on any of my men tomorrow. She could step on me. Hicks sarcastically nodded. Oh yeah. Hicks sarcastically nodded merely for Akane to become rigid. The pilot remained silent, her gaze remaining at a 45-degree angle before she walked out of the tent. She exited the tent. Akane looked up at Kiryu, its large silhouette lit up by high-grade military lights. A slight tear rolled down her face before she quickly wiped it away and removed the dark memory of her mind. Tomorrow isn't our time either. Akane barely mumbled as her fist clenched. I'll make sure of it. There we go. New York City. After the devastating vision fell stagnant as the night wore on. The only activity was from the two remaining Exilian UFOs, which were excavating a large hole where large man-made structures used to challenge the skies. Then, as the sun began to rise in the distance of the siege city, the U.S. forces launched their attack from the Henry Hudson Bridge with Kiryu at its front. X from his command room watched the New York skyline glow with the rising sun and the massive trails of smoke from the distance. So the humans make the first move, X commented as he watched the smoke intensify as the Kaiser witnessed the attack. The X-2 rushed in. We have just reached the crash site 2,000 feet below the city, my leader, asserted the Exilian. He smiled before the yes. Good, retrieve the biological specimen and tell our human scientists to hurry with her work. Humans will try to prevail against our might, and our newest creation will crush all their resistance into dust. Understood, my Kaiser, the Exilian exclaimed before he heard to relay the order. Familiar horror awakened Nick as the sound of footsteps echoed in the hall subway. The scientist jumped into his feet, dropping a tiny box from his pocket as a mass of refugees passed his spot. Nix.
Multiple nicks.
Yeah, just use them to defeat the Exilians.
Yeah, man.
Breathes were long, his heart raced as he scrambled to grab the item, merely for a hand to reach down and pick it up. Up it up.
Up it up.
Up it up.
Up it up.
Up it
up.
Up it up.
Up it up.
Gosh.
Is that a song?
For the world to know.
Probably.
A police officer scanned Nick before he handed the box back to him. Are you having a panic attack? He asked, merely for Nick to open the box and calm down. Something like it, Nick noted before he stood. A friend of mine by the name of Hicks recommended to look at something important to you. Apparently he doesn't need it anymore, but wouldn't be a major, would it? The officer asked. Nick's curiosity raised. It would, but why do you ask? My name is Nick Hicks. I'm or was an officer on the outskirts of the city, and I ran into him yesterday. Been evacuating citizens because he's leading the military to retake the city. If you follow me, I may be able to take you to him. Nick felt the item in his palm, closed the box, and placed it back in his pocket. I can't. I need to get to Channel 8 news station. Figure nodded his head with understanding, then pointed down the tunnel where the tracks split into a fork. Go left, and the nearest station is your destination. By the way, good luck. Thanks, Dick, Nick responded before he started running toward the tunnel. After a long run to the nearest station down at the fork, Nick discovered he had arrived at his destination. The Channel 8 news station was directly above him. With little time to waste, Nick sprinted up to the surface to find the streets empty. No Exilian infantry were in sight, so with the coast clear, the scientist dashed into the new skyscraper. The main lobby was empty with random items scattered across the floor, but the lights still on. With the elevator safety unknown to him, Nick decided to run up the stairs, and he quickly passed out. Audrey's desk and her station were on the 38th floor of the 44th floored building. Jesus Christ, that's a tongue twister. So Nick began his long sprint up the stairs. Then after the 20th floor passed by, Nick's run turned into a walk as the staircase quickly exhausted him.
Staircase?
Yeah, staircase.
Staircase.
Should have gone with the elevator, scientist panted as he passed the 37th floor, or level. A female scream came from him. Suddenly erupted from the next floor, Audrey's floor, causing Nick's energy to flare. Nick sprinted up to the 38th floor before peeking through the door's glass window. A black suit figure wielding a gun was in the distance before he disappeared behind a corner at the end of the hallway. Nick quietly opened the door before silently moved down the hallway and looked into the news department. About 7 Exilians surrounded 7 people and were yelling. So 7 on 7.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, George.
At least no one feels left out. That's good. That's good. I'm happy. Anyone tries to escape again, you all die, one of the Exilians shouted before he signaled to someone out of Nick's view. Another Exilian walked into view. The person the original Exilian signaled with a female in his grasp before he tossed her down toward the other hostages. You're messing with the wrong reporter, man. And hey, some people like that, you know, said Ditto. Nick realized that the hostage that had tried to run was Audrey. Silence, the Exilian shouted while he aimed his gun at Ditto. It's time to move to the roof now, so everyone go to the stairs. Anyone disobeys and they'll be shot along with the next person to them. Audrey, as well as her fellow prisoners surrounded by their Exilian captors, made their way towards the staircase. With a few places to hide, Nick moved quickly into a close-by closet before waiting for the Exilians to pass. After the Exilians left the floor, Nick quietly pursued the aliens up to the roof of the structure. To avoid detection, the scientists just peered through the oblong glass window of the door. There, the scientists found an Exilian fighter awaiting the Exilians and their captives on the flat, empty rooftop. Pass.
Alright. There was only one reason why the Exilians would take prisoners. Nick shivered as he thought of the Exilians using innocent civilians, along with Audrey as cattle. A new sense of urgency filled Nick's being before his rational mind went into overdrive considering every possibility. 14,605,000 to be exact. In those moments, he decided on one important fact. It was that the Exilians would have to die or risk losing the love of his life. After coming to this conclusion, Nick opened his gun up and reprogrammed it to fire one overcharged shot. Then he waited for the perfect time to strike. 4 Exilians boarded the vessel to prepare its return flight back to the mothership, while the other 3 prepared the captors to board the vessel. "Since you gave us trouble before, why don't you come aboard first?" an Exilian proclaimed before he grabbed Audrey by the arm and started dragging her toward the ship. "I will enjoy skidding you most of all." "Let go of me!" Audrey screamed as she struggled to free herself to no avail. As they were halfway toward the ship, Nick sprang into action. The roof's door top swung wide open to reveal the scientist to the 3 stunned Exilians before he unleashed a massive burst of energy into the Exilian fighter. The energy discharge knocked Nick off his feet while also detonating the fighter. A massive fireball erupted from where the fighter had been, and while the 3 surviving Exilians recovered, they found Nick back on his feet with his depleted gun aimed at them. Move and I will do what I just did to your ship," Nick bluffed as he aimed his energy-depleted gun at the Exilians. 2 Exilians dropped their guns, kicked them aside, and put their hands in the air, while the Exilian holding Audrey aimed his gun at the reporter, after he scanned Nick's gun thoroughly. "Drop your weapon or I'll shoot her," the Exilian demanded as he continued to study Nick's gun. "If I do, then you will just kill her anyway," Nick retorted as he aimed his useless gun at the Exilian's head. "Only one way to find out," the Exilian commented as he put the gun to Audrey's temple. His bluff called as well as not wanting Audrey to get hurt. Nick lowered his weapon as the Exilian raised his at the scientist. "Like the Kaiser said, weak beings," the Exilian commented before Audrey elbowed the alien in the gut, causing him to drop the gun. As she, in addition to the Exilian holding her, started brawling for the gun, Nick sprinted toward the closest Exilian gun, which was lying next to the edge of the structure's roof. One of the Exilians got to it first and aimed it at Nick, only for the scientist to ram into the alien with his depleted weapon a second later. The full force of the blow sent the Exilian falling over the edge of the structure, as well as causing him to drop his gun onto the rooftop. With a usable gun in his hand and only 2 Exilians left, Nick turned his attention to the Exilian not struggling with Audrey to see him, now with a gun aiming at him. With no usable cover, the scientist turned his original gun vertically to act as a shield as the Exilian discharged his weapon. The alien got 3 shots off, the first 2 hitting the gun while the third grazed the scientist's shoulder, before Nick countered with 2 blasts from his own energy gun. Nick's shots impacted the alien's abdomen, causing the alien to stumble. After a few steps backward, the alien fell to the ground dead. Then Nick turned his attention to the Exilian struggling with Audrey for the gun. "Audrey, move!" Nick shouted to his girlfriend. The reporter jumped out of the way as Nick fired 3 shots at the Exilian. The alien stumbled backward in shock as well as anguish. The Exilian refused to fall, and Nick lowered his gun, deciding best not to say anything to the Exilian. He wasn't worth it. Slowly, gravity took control of him, causing him to trip over the edge of the structure. With the rooftop safe, Nick slowly made his way over to Audrey. "Are you okay?" Nick compassionately inquired as he put his hand on Audrey's shoulder. Audrey remained mute before she immediately grabbed him and whispered, "Thank you, Nick." Nick said nothing but held her tight as his reply until one of the other people on the roof asked, "Are you Special Forces?" Nick separated from Audrey to respond, "No, I am just a scientist." As the rest of the group snapped out of their shock, Nick as well as Audrey led them slowly down the building stairs. Curious at what happened Audrey experienced in the last day, Nick inquired, "What happened?" "Well, you know me. I always get my story and I stayed behind to cover it. Animal is still at his relatives, so it was just me here, until some survivors came came in under the cover of night to avoid the Exilians. Unfortunately, the aliens followed them into the structure, crushed my computer when I tried to escape, and that is pretty much the entire story. I'm glad to see you're all right, Nick sweetly responded. Audrey paused, her arm scratching the other as she thought about Nick. But are you doing better? Nick stopped as well, his gaze dropping slightly. Yeah, Hicks had a few tips, so it's getting better. Audrey smiled, moved in close, and gave the rigid Nick a kiss on the cheek. Her arms grabbed his own, comforting him enough for a smile to form on his face. You know you don't have to do this by yourself. I'm right here. I always will be. Nick looked into her eyes and felt his heart slow. Time seemed to almost pause as he looked into her eyes. Every beat of his heart shook his body, and the scientist neared his love only for a tremor to shake his body that did not originate from within. A few inches from Audrey's face, Nick stopped. His eyes widened as the rhythmic tremors increased. Oh no, Nick whispered before he pulled away from Audrey and yelled, Everyone hurry! Go, go, go! The group of survivors further down the stairs broke into a panic while Nick grabbed Audrey and ran. The shaking grew with every step, the tremors affecting everyone's movements. Nick, what is... A massive skeletal hand suddenly swiped through the lower floors, killing all those below them, and stopping the pair cold as they witnessed the destruction. Destroyed stairs and pieces of the building fell from the gaping hole as an imposing roar echoed from the cause. We have to get higher, Nick yelled as the hand came back, as the hand turned to reveal its palm. Audrey and Nick ran up the stairs as fast as they could while the hand tore upward through the structure. Roars continued to echo as the pair raced for their lives until they reached the roof. The duo then looked down to the street floor to discover a massive skeletal creature slowly tearing apart the building. I should have guessed, Nick gasped as his mind identified the beast, the creature attacking. It's called Monster X. Why is it attacking us? Audrey inquired as she braced along the edge of the structure to keep herself from falling off. The Exilians most likely noticed the fireworks and think some type of military unit is in the building, Nick explained to Audrey as he watched the massive chunks of structure get ripped out. If Monster X brings down the building, then their problems are solved. My guess he's only doing it to slow the draw out of their units they think are nearby. With a new fear surging through her, Audrey asked, So how long until the building comes down? Nick remained silent as the building shook around below him. A few minutes, at most. Monique awakened from her very light sleep to hear the sound of distant explosions in the background. She turned to see smoke billowing through the clouds and multiple fireballs falling from the sky. Rejuvenated, Monique returned to Randy only to find him slouched over Nigel, in addition to drooling on the machine. A soft kick in the side only caused the intern to moan. 5 more minutes. Monique then pushed Randy, causing him to impact in the cold ground, which instantly awakened him. He jumped into surprise, merely to find Monique standing right next to him, with a small smile of satisfaction on her face. Did you finish hacking into the ship? The French agent questioned. Randy rubbed his eyes, yawned, and then waited a few more moments to fully awaken before he said, Let me check. A quick look at Nigel's screens, and Randy stated, Yeah, just finished the translation code I installed, so it's ready to fly, Captain. Monique nodded with approval before she declared, Then let us not waste time here. The French agent entered the alien craft before Randy dragged himself on board, still very tired. How come you're awake if you kept watch all night, my little angel? Randy questioned as he sat down next to Monique in the pilot seat. Training and discipline allows me to work with just a few hours of light sleep, Monique explained as she looked around the control room. So how do you plan on flying this thing? As much as I would love to demonstrate my impeccable and rad skills, Nigel will be flying us into the mothership, Randy proclaimed as he ran the back of the as he ran back out of the ship and brought the robot into the control room. He can access their systems when we enter the mothership, as well as fly us into the docking station. Then activate him so we can leave, Monique asserted to Randy before the intern connected Nigel into the ship's systems. Flip this, press that, and we should have... The ship shook as its anti-gravity thrusters engaged. The back door sealed shut, and Randy used Nigel to lift the ship slowly from the warehouse. As the skyline of the city appeared, the pair witnessed the fires engulfing the city and hundreds of Exilian fighters patrolling its skies. Then, with the destination in sight, Randy slowly flew the craft into the city, revealing the horror that lay on the streets below. Monique looked at her friend and watched his usual uplifting grin disappear. "Let's not waste time," Monique reassuringly said, bringing light back on into Randy's disposition. Randy shook his head and accelerated the vessel toward the mothership, which large figure eclipsed even the Empire State Building below it. As the capture vessel breached its shields and entered the inside, it quickly found a docking platform and docked. "Ta-da!" Randy cheered, merely to turn to see Monique already armed for her venture. "Stay here and keep the ship secure while I go out and retrieve our friends," Monique announced before the back of the door opened. "I will not be long." No pregunta," Randy acknowledged before he sat back in the pilot's seat and watched Monique disappear. Explosions detonated in the sky as Kiryu unleashed a missile barrage of its massive barrage of its wrist lasers, in addition to its shoulder rockets on the Exilian fighters. There! The enemy ship's energy weapons detonated harmlessly over Kiryu's metallic exoskeleton, which made the robot the perfect object to attract enemy fire. As Kiryu advanced through the waves of incoming energy blasts, Hicks' division followed close behind, attacking anything that the machine accidentally missed. "You and your robot, Lieutenant, aren't doing half bad," Hicks joked over the radio as he watched the android slaughter the fighters. Thanks for the compliment, Major," Akane stated while she continued Kiryu's assault toward the main city. "How close are we to the Exilian mothership?" Kiryu's pilot asked, since she was not familiar with the surrounding area. She could clearly see it, but the distance was hard to judge. "We just passed the George Washington Bridge bus terminal, so I would say about another hour until we reach the city at this rate," Hicks replied over the radio from his Humvee. "We are moving at a pretty good pace, since divisions moving along our flanks are wiping out anything you miss." A sonic shriek then filled the air, and the Exilian fires dispersed for a few seconds for a large creature to fly through, as well as land in front of Kiryu. Massive arm blades, along with a single red eye, were the creature's trademarks, and all of humanity was feared as Gigan. Yes, Gigan did indeed trademark his single eye.
No, nobody can be a single-eyed creature. Gigan has that shit packed.
The Muto would beg to differ. That's right, everyone thought it was Gigan, because it was like, he's the only guy with one eye.
Gigan's seeing them in court.
After witnessing the creature land, Hicks yelled over the radio, "All forces move around Kiryu, but give it a few blocks of space. Form a defensive line to stop all fighters from moving in so Kiryu can fight this thing." The Major then changed his radio signal so Akane could hear. "Give it hell!" Nick's division suddenly split around the motionless Kiryu while Akane prepped the machine's weapons. Just a Gigan. It shouldn't take too long. Gigan was the first to attack with a powerful cluster ray. Kiryu staggered back from the energy burst, only to unleash its shoulder rockets. A massive plume of fire covered Gigan before the android dashed out of the cloud towards Kiryu. While the Exilian-controlled creature was about to bring its two blade-like arms down on Kiryu, the two blades ejected from the android's wrists Oh, two blades ejected. Okay. Wrists just in time to stop Gigan's sides. A volley of sparks cascaded as both monsters tried to force the other backward, only for a standstill to occur. Then Akane, after realizing that the stalemate was going nowhere, activated Kiryu's blade's electrical feature. Both of Kiryu's swords suddenly discharged electricity, causing the Exilian android to screech in severe anguish as its own blades became conductors. Gigan retreated backward from Kiryu before the alien cyborg started swiping furiously at Mechagodzilla. Kiryu blocked each strike with its blades, causing electricity to flow into Gigan with every block. That's kind of cool. Gigan, tired of his constant failures, fired a direct cluster ray at Kiryu's right shoulder. Part of the android's right shoulder pack detonated, sending the Mechagodzilla recoiling from the shockwave, only for Gigan to slash a massive chunk of metal from its left shoulder pack. As Gigan was about to send another swipe at Kiryu, the android discharged a twin maser at the Exilian puppet's face. The cyborg staggered from the unexpected attack for a short second, merely to return his attention and discover Kiryu hunched over. "Try this on for size," Akane shouted as she activated the missile pack's thrusters. The rocket pack fired off Kiryu before slamming into Gigan at high speeds. Kiryu followed the launch while Gigan skidded backward from the pack's thrusters, with its wrist lasers targeting the shoulder pack. The pack exploded, expelling a massive shockwave that even Akane could feel within Kiryu. As the smoke cleared, Gigan appeared out of the dust, still standing, but its frontal bio-armor severely deteriorated. With its programming still edging from the fight against the pain the cyborg was feeling, Gigan fired its cables around Kiryu. The Godzilla doppelganger, after becoming entangled, tried slashing through the ropes with its blade, but the cables proved to be made of an extremely dense material. With his prey unable to escape, Gigan began reeling in Kiryu before it could activate its chest blade. Kiryu struggled to stand its ground and fired its twin masers as well as arm cannons to stop Gigan, but the cyborg proved to be too resistant as it continued to reel in Kiryu. With little other options left, Akane decided to activate Kiryu's main thrusters. Kiryu blasted into the sky, but not without Gigan as the two climbed high into the atmosphere. Gigan, after a shocking takeoff, activated its thrusters and slashed Kiryu as it flew past the android. The cyborg, in a display of its aerial superiority, flew around Kiryu, continued its chest saw, in addition to bladed slashes. Though as the rope tangled around Kiryu, Gigan's flight became more restrictive until there was nowhere for Gigan to fly. Seizing the opportunity, Kiryu grabbed onto Gigan's throat as well as its left arm before changing its trajectory to the direction of the ground on the opposite side of New York City, so not to interfere with the Major's advance. "Let's see how you survive impact," Akane yelled. Kiryu's claws tightened around Gigan's neck, and as the pair neared impact, a massive burst of thrust jettisoned from Gigan. The duo leveled out at the last second, sending the two into a wall of man-made mountains. From his vehicle, Nix felt the ground suddenly shake. A plume of dust so large it peeked over the other structure suddenly filled the horizon, and Hicks responded, grabbed into his radio. "Lieutenant Akane Yashiro, do you copy?" The line remained dead, an eerie static the only reply to the Major's call. "Akane Yashiro, do you respond? Over." Static continued to echo across the channel, and after a minute of its constant buzzing, the Major changed the channel to address his troops. "We just lost our biggest asset, gentlemen, so everyone regroup on me. Once we do reunite, let us show these alien bastards hell." Two reptilian eyes opened after Kiryu's tremor. As consciousness took hold of the mighty lizard, Zilla began tumbling toward the surface until a familiar yet dreaded sense overcame it. He could feel that somewhere his father was in dire trouble. With a sense of loyalty like no other monster, Zilla burrowed at full speed toward his adopted parent. Pass.
The Channel 8 news building started creaking as the massive recent tremor finally caused enough damage for its supports to fail. In addition,
Gray Shot,
Hey.
you literally just disappeared there.
Oh, I can redo it. No worries.
Yeah.
Damn.
I'll just do the whole thing from the start. The Channel 8 News building started creaking as the massive recent tremor finally caused enough damage for its supports to fail. Nick, in addition to Audrey, felt the structure creaking, breaking as well as bending under their feet, and with nowhere to go, Nick could only think of one escape. After surveying all of the sides, Nick discovered a smaller structure with a large pool on the roof. With the Channel 8 building leading in that direction, Nick knew it was their best bet for survival. Audrey, when I say go, run with the falling building off that ledge, Nick commented before, during which he walked to the opposing end of the structure. You want to jump? Audrey skeptically inquired while she followed her boyfriend. It's our best bet, but we have to time perfectly, Nick retorted as he stopped his movements as well as started waiting for the building to fall. Audrey paused and tried to think of some way to denounce or at least come up with her own strategy, only to grab Nick's hand and say, okay, but we do together. We go together. Wouldn't want any other way, Nick proclaimed before he shared a kiss with Audrey. A massive crack then resounded, signaling the building's supports finally giving way. Monster X, seeing the building in a slow free fall, quickly moved out of its path to avoid injury. As the building tilted further, Nick held on to Audrey's hand while he repeated to Audrey, wait. Adrenaline levels built up in both of them until Nick finally yelled, run! The duo sprinted across the roof of the building until both of them jumped off the edge. The building stopped its fall, a support beam stubbornly refusing to break as Nick and Audrey continued their free fall. Both of them clung to the other, hoping to land in the water, until Nick opened his eyes to see the intended structure continue past them. Anger built up in his frantic mind as he knew the next stop was the pavement below. With certain death in his and Audrey's future, Nick positioned himself so he would take the full impact of the fall in a desperate move to save his girlfriend, whose eyes still were shut. Still convinced that he would save her, that he could save. The scientist closed his eyes, the panic from his nightmare returning as his head thrashed and his heart raced. He ready to feel the acute pain of impact merely for a screeching sound along with a gust of massive air to meet him in addition to Audrey first. The screech was so loud the duo was forced to let go of the other to cover their ears. Nick as well as Audrey then looked down as they hovered to see a massive familiar maw before the creature under them grabbed the duo out of the air. So there, the wind breath, bam, first use, actual use.
Oh, shoot. Oh. Nice.
It actually gets used.
Yes. Technically it was also used to knock out Megalon's fire. But yeah, that was the intention here. It was kind of unclear, but... No. Heart racing, adrenaline pumping, and expecting to be dead. It took a few moments for Nick as well as Audrey to regain their composure in the claws of their savior. Two loyal eyes looked at Nick before a major... I just want to make note, since Zilla's head is elongated, it would kind of be very hard for Zilla to look at him with two eyes unless he was like one of them fish from SpongeBob.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was kind of just thinking. I was just thinking that too. I was like, huh, isn't that a little weird? His head face is a little bit more boxy for that, unless he was looking like right at him. But
yeah.
So, can someone make front-facing Zilla?
Gosh darn it.
That would be a strange looking Zilla. Okay. Still in Zilla's hands and knowing all three of them had to go. Oh, sorry. Two loyal eyes looked at Nick before a cracking caused Zilla to look up at the leaning structure. The final of the sports of the Channel 8 news station had just broken and it was beginning its final fall. Still in Zilla's hands and knowing all three of them had to go, Nick yelled, Zilla, run! Away, away! The giant lizard looked back at its doctor father before it turned to begin its run, only to face a new threat. Monster X wasted little time observing his foe before he smacked Zilla backward. Zilla screeched and staggered backward, but not without closing the hand both Audrey as well as Nick were in to keep them safe. The battalion then glanced at the slow-falling structure and then at Monster X before Zilla charged at the fiend. Monster X tried out another claw swipe simply for Zilla to dodge and swipe Monster X's feet out from under him using his tail. Monster X fell to the ground, whereas Zilla continued running. With no damage taken, the space creature rolled over merely to see the Channel 8 news stations fall right on top of it. A massive dust cloud enveloped the area as the building's impact tore the news station apart. Zilla easily outran the cloud before stopping in addition to dropping the pair off at a safe distance. Zilla took one last look at Nick before running into the dust cloud. Where is he going? Audrey asked as she regained her composure and bearing. He's going after Monster X, Nick replied before he accompanied Audrey to the entrance of an abandoned McDonald's. See, hey, we're getting all the chains!
Yeah, there we are, McDonald's!
Stay safe for the moment.
I want a burger.
Safe for the moment, Nick proclaimed, "Stay here and stay hidden." "Where are you going?" Audrey inquired with frustration. "Monique, Randy, Mendel, and Elsie need a secure landing site, after they break out of the mothership," Nick explained. "I have flares so they can decipher where to land. Right now, they plan to land where Monster X is." "Sounds like you need help," Audrey countered. "No, you're going to stay here where it's safe," Nick shouted demandingly. "I almost lost you twice today and a few times earlier this week." Audrey stared into Nick's eyes as she was about to explode with fury, only to see compassion and fear in her boyfriend's eyes. Audrey exhaled deeply to relieve her fury before she said, "I was worried about you the entire time I was at the news building. I had no idea what had happened to you, and I was hoping the entire time you were safe, Nick. Let's be honest, we both have a knack of getting into things we shouldn't. So I'm coming with you, for better or worse." Realizing he had lost the argument, Nick sighed and gave Audrey a small Exilian handgun of the 2 Exilian handguns he had in his possession. Audrey reached to grab the weapon merely for Nick to reach for her hands and say, "If you're coming, then take one of these. Follow me and stay close." "I've been around you long enough to know this," Audrey retorted, only to take the gun and walk toward the tallest structure on their block. After hours of working tirelessly, Elsie felt she was going to be jumped as the cells in her petri dish multiplied with the M-base. Knowing as soon as she showed the Exilians her results, both she along with Mendel were dead, Elsie planned to keep working. Shortly after her success and before she could warn Mendel, who fidgeted with machinery in the corner, X2 returned. "Your day is up," the Exilian proclaimed as he walked toward her. "Still some minor problems, but I should be done in another day," Elsie replied as she pretended to work. "By our scans, you seem to be done," the high official countered before he waved the 2 Exilians that had kept watch for some time to gather Elsie's work. "Where are you going?" Elsie demanded as she watched her work. "Oh, what are you doing?" Elsie demanded as she watched her work be taken by one Exilian as the other restrained her. "We've been monitoring your progress through the microscope," the Exilian explained as he was given the cells. "Thank you, Miss Chapman. You and your assistant services will no longer be needed." Then as he left the room, X2 shouted, "Kill them!" The 2 Exilian guards that had watched over the two then drew their weapons and opened fire. Mendel tackled Elsie down to the ground before a line of desks during which laser fire erupted above them. Shortly after the initial blast, a series of cracks, yelps, along with more energy fire then erupted before the room went silent. To see what was going on, Mendel signaled Elsie to stay put before he awkwardly crawled across the ground to peek around the corner. While the engineer looked, someone stepped in front of him. Mendel then looked up, expecting to see an Exilian with a gun, only to discover Monique. "What are you two doing?" Monique asked the duo before they jumped to their feet. After looking at the 2 down Exilians they had previously been shooting at him, Mendel suddenly hugged Monique and said, thank you for rescuing us." Monique pushed him aside as Elsie whined, "About time you showed up, but where's Nick and Randy? They're off of sabotaging the ship?" Randy awaits us on the ship. Nick has secured us a landing zone once we escape the mothership. I don't know why I'm doing a Russian accent for Monique. Monique explained. "Wait, why would you need to get a landing space?" Mendel inquired, only for Monique to counter, "Because they have invaded." With the question taken care of, Monique headed to the exit with the duo before Mendel yelled, "Wait a second!" "What is it?" Monique demanded, who turned only to see Mendel grab a computer-sized mess of machinery. Wire stuck out of every side, tubes easily protruded, and at its core lay Mendel's phone. "The Exilian fighters might detect us before we get to Nick, but if they can't fly, they can't interfere with us," Mendel explained in his usually nasal voice as he rejoined his teammates. "I built a crude EMP device while Elsie worked, so all we need to do is set it on a minor junction that is connected to the main reactor, and it should overload the shields, in addition to cause an EMP. The chaos will let us escape once we are far enough away." "Why did you build an EMP?" Elsie asked in confusion as she exited the doorway. To knock out the lights and then run," Mendel retorted. "And a gun wouldn't have helped?" Elsie countered, only for Mendel to say, "That may have actually." The ruins of the Channel 8 news station lay scattered across the streets in New York. The rubble remained perfectly still, encased in a cloud of brown dust, until a skeletal hand erupted from the debris. Monster X rose from the rubble and stood back on his feet. The building's collapse had only stalled him as he began his search for the creature that attacked him. Monster X did not have to wait long, though, as an all-too-familiar bellow echoed around New York. Monster X closed its eyes, listening for the sound source. Footsteps suddenly resonated across Monster X's body, and the fiend crossed his arms in front of his chest as Zilla slammed its bulk into the alien. The two slid backward until the pair ruptured the base of a nearby structure. A cloud of dust first exploded out the back of it before the building fell down upon the two. Zilla shook off the debris that covered his form before he roared at the fallen alien monster. 6 swirling laser blasts blasted from the debris. The attack detonated across the reptile, sending it staggering back as Monster X rose. The alien brushed the rubble off his body, then turned to face Zilla. Monster X did not roar at his adversary, nor did he look upon him as a worthy foe. The creature that stood before him would die, and if it gave even the slightest challenge to him, it would have served some purpose in its pitiful life. Zilla's eyes closed with annoyance, and he burst toward the creature that dare attack his father. The lizard closed the gap between the pair in almost a second, yet Monster X struck first with a powerful backhand. Zilla, hey, there you go, John Wayne. There's your demeaning moment. Zilla just got bitch smacked.
Oh, yeah.
Zilla stumbled backward before its spines flashed. Green flames engrossed Monster X's form, causing a minor detonation to across the alien's body. Zilla roared in triumph, yet as the flames dispersed, Monster X re-emerged unfazed. Monster X exhaled in frustration. No, not even a challenge. Monster X sprinted towards Zilla again. The alien grabbed Zilla's head, however, Monster X was far from finished. The alien continued sprinting forward, then plunged the reptile's head into a line of man-made structures. A line of destruction cut across the city until Monster X spun. The alien tossed Zilla away with ease, sending the lizard to impact the heart of Times Square. Dozens of screens shattered from Zilla's landing, raining metal and glass upon the beast. Zilla screeched in pain, and as he heard Monster X walk toward him, the beast burrowed under the ground. Monster X stopped moving as he watched Zilla flee. The action did not surprise him, but it disappointed the alien Kaiser. With no further enjoyment to be had, Monster X turned away. As the fiend began to walk, a blast of green atomic fire impacted him from behind. Monster X quickly spun around and fired a gravity beam, merely to destroy the center structure of the square. Monster X growled in annoyance at the act until another beam struck him again from behind. The alien stumbled and growled. I think it's openly growled for Zilla to confront it.
Opened growled, yes.
Yeah, openly growled. With no response, Monster X backed himself against the wall of man-made structures. With no one for Zilla to blitz him from, the lizard would stupidly fall into his trap. As the exilian creature prepared to unleash a trifecta of gravity beams, a low growl hummed from above its head. Monster X slowly looked up in shock to see Zilla, looking straight down at him from atop the structure. Monster X grinned at the sight. He would have a true fight after all. So this is Zilla, X commented as he watched Monster X battle the reptile. What a pathetic creature, but I guess it means the Cetopians won't be getting their monster back. With monsters on his mind, X moved... I mean, you don't have to worry about, paying him back if the monster's dead. With monsters on his mind, X moved to his command telecom and asked, how much longer until it is alive? After a few seconds of waiting, X asked the same question again, but still no one responded. Then anger consuming his mind, X shouted, is anyone there? Sack then came with advice before X2 replied, I apologize, my leader. The prisoners have escaped. They finished the formula, which I am delivering to the site, but I have my men searching for them now. The guards claim that they were attacked by someone of great agility and strength. X's scowl turned into a smile before he replied, is it that half-breed fool, the one that killed my predecessor? It is possible. The Japanese are definitely in the city, the alien replied. Kill the gods for their incompetence, but I shall begin searching as well, stated X, as excitement came over him. As he's made his way out of the command room and down the endless halls of the mothership, X knew of only one place where the Kaiser could escape, and that place was the Exilian fighter bay. Nick looked at his deployed flares as well as the Exilian-filled sky. Think they will see it? Nick asked Audrey in curiosity. Yeah, but I think a lot of other things will see it as well, so we might want to hide, the reporter stated as the duo made their way to the roof's top door to avoid detection. Pass.
At least 100 Exilian soldiers surrounded the alien dig site. They were ordered to hold the area at any cost, considering the entire invasion centered on what was under New York. Then a Exilian fighter landed, and X2 exited with a large bottle in his grip. Is it the whiskey? The high-ranking Exilian moved to one of the infantry and asked, "Have you found the organism?" "Yes," replied the alien soldier. "We have found some small traces of it throughout the ancient ship." "Good. Now expose the organism to what is in this container. Get it drunk." The Exilian infantryman grabbed the container before he nodded in approval. X2 quickly returned to his ship and watched the area as the soldier he had given the capsule to entered the dig site. A minute passed and the Exilian official watched as the soldiers quickly flee as something grew. Three hand burst from the hold and tore into a nearby structure, causing the building to fall and blanket the area with dust. The Exilian smiled through at the destruction as a massive dark gray blob emerged from the cloud. "A perfect new addition to our invasion," the Exilian stated before he sent a message to the mothership. "The organism is now under our control. It is ready to achieve perfection." Mandel fidgeted with his custom electromagnetic pulse fidget spinner device as he rigged it to one of the Exilian power generators. "How much longer?" Monique insisted as she watched the door for Exilians. "We cannot stay much longer." "And it is set," Mandel asserted before he activated the phone's timer, which acted as its heart. "How long do you want me to set it? 20 minutes, 30? 5 minutes, Monique replied as she set up a personal timer on her phone. "Cutting it a little close considering everything in New York that is electronic will be shut down, including our ride, and Newton won't be on our side then," Elsie commented, only for Monique to glance at her harshly. "Any longer and we risk discovery," Monique retorted before she signaled the two to follow. The trio slowly moved down the halls while avoiding the fast-moving Exilian troops. Then, after 3 minutes of movement, Monique felt a large relief as the ship's docking door was within her sight just down the hallway. The trio, with the coast clear, moved to the door and entered their captured fighter, only to find Randy working on the ship's systems. "Nigel!" Mandel exclaimed before he hugged his robot, as Elsie just sat down in the back and said, "So, can we get a move on? Good to see you two are okay, but I am just doing fine. No need for a thank you," Randy sarcastically explained while the duo took their seats. As Monique entered the ship, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. The agent quickly peeked outside of the door as Randy started up the fighter to see a single Exilian wearing all black and sunglasses walking down the corridor. "Time to move," Monique shouted before she opened fire using her Exilian energy weapon. The Exilian was quick as he ducked into a fighter corridor while under laser fire. With her target suppressed, Monique closed the back entrance and yelled, "Time to move!" "Roger, Captain," Randy quipped as he piloted the Exilian fighter from its bay and took off toward the mothership and exit. Unlike their entry, however, multiple Exilian ships were also detached as well as started firing at the captured fighter. "How do they know we're not one of them?" Randy inquired as he dodged enemy fire through Nigel's control system. "The Exilian I shot must have alerted them," Monique explained as she bounced around the confined space. "Doesn't this thing have guns?" Mandel questioned as he grew queasy from the rocky flight. "Unless you ask them nicely to move in front of us, I really can't do much," Randy yelled. The captured fighter weaved and dodged the laser fire before racing out of the Exilian mothership but 5 Exilian fighters were still on his trail as the fighter bay closed. The fighter bay doors closed. Now when the New York skyline, Randy activated the ship scanners to pick up Nick's flares. What did you do to Nigel? Mantell questioned as the rooftops of New York buildings appeared on his screen. Added a new feature, which is telling me our parking zone is here. Randy countered before he aimed the ship toward the rooftop. Though how are we going to park while not getting shot? Glide it in. Monique quipped, only for Randy to burst into laughter, causing her face to turn red. First off, phrasing.
Yeah, first off, phrasing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glide in. Was that a sex joke?
Yes.
Oh.
What? That makes no sense.
Grisha, I don't want to know about your personal life. What you...
I guess you could say
Yes.
that one glided over my head.
Yes. Well, at least for Randy, him hearing Monique say that, probably, again, maybe not the best use of that.
I hate Randy so much.
You want to know what Randy and Rick have in common? They both start with R.
And they're annoying as fuck.
Oh, I think the second
Yeah.
line of his is pretty true.
Second, how do I glide in a diamond? The intern retorted before Monique's countdown timer beeped. Mandel's EMP device detonated, turning the mothership's own defensive shield into a massive electromagnetic pulse. The shield expanded rapidly in all directions, shutting down everything in or above New York. Anything electronic instantly deactivated from the pulse, including the hundreds of Exilian fighters still flying over the city. Then, like a powerful storm, the powerless fighters fell from the sky and impacted the city below. I would suggest holding on to something, Randy screamed as the fighter lost power. The fighter, after a few seconds of skillful falling by Randy, impacted the roof of the flared building. The vessel skidded across the flat surface until it came to a stop at the edge of the structure, sending pieces of rubble off its top. Ladies and gentlemen, you may now run toward the exit, Randy joked as he checked to see how everyone was doing. Everyone moaned to announce they were okay before Monique kicked the back door open. The 4 teammates stumbled onto the roof before Randy began to laugh. That's what happens when you mess with us, Randy commented as he pointed to a Exilian fighter that had been firing at them only to crash into the building next door. A ring of fire now surrounded the craft, which slowly tilted out and fell to the street below. The sound of his teammates, specifically Randy's laughter, caused Nick as well as Audrey to exit the stairwell and walk to the rooftop. Still worrying about them? Audrey quit merely for Nick to stare at her. No, they're good. He retorted only to walk out with Audrey by his side to the team's delight. Well, Nikki. I see you've been busy, Elsie commented while she walked over to the pair. I would be mad that you didn't come personally to save us, but I think sending the assassin was the right call. Yeah, Hefe, not like we didn't just kick a second round of alien butt. Randy yelled as he scanned the surrounding area for other fallen ships. This is why you don't mess with the New York. The greatest city in the world.
With totally no crime rate. Totally.
Now let me tell you something. New York is the greatest city in the fucking world.
You guys comment about that, but I'm pretty sure they just killed like a whole bunch of people because if they
They just
try to scare a lot.
like a lot of Asian people got injured and killed over there.
Yeah.
What?
Oh,
No, I'm talking.
Damn.
What? No, I'm just talking about like if they activated an EMP, right? They activated an EMP, and
Like in the
Oh,
match.
in the
I was talking about real life.
Oh yeah.
no, what? No.
Great shot, your match killed people.
What? No.
good grief.
Elsie chuckled before she noticed. Oh. What?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Elsie chuckled before she noticed Audrey and said to Nick, "So, how was it this side of the invasion?" "Nothing too exciting," Nick commented before he signaled his team to follow him to the roof's exit. "Well played, humans." The group turned to find out who was talking, only for the person to jump over their heads and land in front of the exit. Wearing black sunglasses, a black cape, and with spiky hair, the mysterious individual looked like a punkish young adult of Japan. Monique instantly recognized him as the alien she had shot at in the fighter bay corridor, but everyone else just looked at him with confusion. Nick, as well as Monique, aimed their guns, but the Exilian laughed at the act. "You honestly think those will help you?" Exilian proclaimed. Audrey, Elsie, in addition to Mandel, backed away toward the landed Exilian fighter as Nick and Monique fired their respective weapons. The Exilian easily deflected the energy blast with the palm of his hands before he exclaimed, "You don't realize who you are messing, do you?" The Exilian then shouted, "I am the Kaiser. I am your race's destroyer. I am the Exilians. I am..." "Someone has an ego problem," Elsie whispered as she watched the situation from afar.
Not untrue.
Monique, along with Nick, then ready to fire another salvo, as Randy watched behind them, only for X to dash. His movements were like lightning as he knocked all three teammates to the ground while he retrieved their guns. "You won't need these," the Kaiser proclaimed as he crushed the two weapons in his grasp. "I was warned by my advisors of a group in New York, which I assumed you are. But I never would have guessed you would destroy most of my invasion force. For your involvement, you all shall die, slowly, painfully, and I assure you, by my hands." "You two get everyone away," Nick explained as he recovered to his feet. "I'll hold him off. If I don't win, Zilla will surely come." "That is suicide," Monique stated as she moved in front of Randy and Nick. "I will hold him off as all of you fly away." "No way," Randy commented as he moved beside Monique. I'm not going to back down to some alien Jet Li wannabe. Besides, pretty sure our ride is crap anyway." "Touching," X laughed as he scanned his opponents. "You humans are so pitiful. But I assure you, your pet is being taken care of, and without him, well, we all know how this is going to play out." An Abrams tank detonated in a fire explosion as continuous laser fire finally broke through its armor. Two RPGs rocketed down the street in response to the attack, blasting a half-dozen Exilian soldiers to hell in the process. Hicks dropped the weapon and looked at the men all around him. They were growing tired, and after Kiryu's destruction, losing too many men with every block. As Hicks ready to order another advance, a few dozen Exilian fighters prepared a bombing run. Hicks ready to duck merely to watch a large blue wave pass across the fighters and send them crashing. As other Exilian craft continued this trend, Hicks watched in amazement as well as relief. What the hell is going on, sir? One of the soldiers near the Major asked as he watched the fighters fall to the ground like meteors. Hicks smiled before he said, I think one of my friends just saved our asses soldier. Though we can't waste the opportunity to get the Air Force on the line. They have their opening.
Okay, so but a whole bunch of humans didn't die. Cool. Glad I planned that.
Yes.
Damn. I guess their asses aren't saved. Monster X staggered and smashed Zilla into structures to make the reptile release its grip as Zilla desperately held on to Monster X's backside. With every strike, Zilla held strong until the alien jumped backward through another structure. After the impact, the reptile recovered quickly and rose to its feet, only for Monster X to fire 3 powerful gravity beam blasts at Zilla. Monster X grabbed the shell-shocked Ziller by the head and smashed it into the closest structure. Ziller's body fell limp as Monster X lifted the creature to eye level with it. As the fiend scanned Ziller while holding its mouth shut to ensure it could not breathe fire, Ziller's eye opened and 2 plumes of concentrated fire burst from its nostrils. The 2 blazes melted 2 of the Exilian creature's own eyes, causing Monster X to drop Ziller. Monster X roared in agony from the underhanded attack before refocusing on the lizard, who was nowhere to be found. Monster X slowly rotated in preparation for the eventual strike, merely for the ground to begin to shake. The Exilian creature stood its ground as the tremors strengthened before a familiar roar echoed from under him. Before the fiend could move, the 2 buildings from each side of him collapsed in his direction as the ground beneath him caved in. Debris and rubble covered the skeletal monster before Ziller surfaced farther from the street. The reptile scanned its quickly made grave, but roared at the position to get Monster X awake. He knew that it was still alive, but waiting for Ziller to wander closer. An irritated growl echoed beneath the mounds of superheated debris. A hand quickly burst from the pit, out of the pit, and with it, Monster X's form rose as well. The fiend snarled as its failed ploy, yet it mattered little. The outcome of the battle was clear. Without wasting any time, Monster X dashed at full speed towards Ziller. The reptile did the same, except it positioned its head so it would hit the fiend like a battering ram. The 2 creatures collided, causing a sickening crack to follow their impact. The sound was misleading, though, as both monsters, without slowing down, traded blows. Zilla clawed and chomped while Monster X slashed as well as sent powerful jabs. A strong uppercut from Monster X caused Ziller to skid backwards, and the reptile unleashed a concentrated green inferno. The Exilian blocked the ray with its arms only to cover its face and find Ziller gone. A large hole apparent where Zilla had been. Monster X waited patiently for the reptile to emerge. A slight tremor behind the fiend caused Monster X to turn around quickly and unleash a gravity bolt. Dust filled the air along with a bellow of pain from Zilla before the dirt settled to reveal another hole. Monster X then waited patiently until he felt another tremor. As he did before, Monster X turned around and fired at where he felt the quake. Dust covered the ground for a few moments and a familiar screech echoed. Unlike the last attack, the dirt settled to reveal relatively untouched ground. Confused, Monster X looked closely at the breached area, only for a massive strike of pain to originate from his twin tails. Monster X turned only to feel a sickening snap where the end of his tail had been. The Fiend watched as Zilla retreated back underground with a massive chunk of the alien's tail it had bitten off. Fury pulsated through Monster X. It dared to injure him, to defy his place. The very idea brought fury to the alien, whose eyes now glowed with pure power. Monster X unleashed gravity bolts in every direction. Cement and concrete exploded upward as Monster X tried to bring Zilla up from the ground. As dust as well as rubble clouded his vision, Monster X subsided his attack and let the dust settle around him, merely to find Zilla directly in front of him. Zilla triumphantly roared in the face of Monster X, a cry that reverberated across the city. The reptile jumped and chomped down on the Fiend's left arm, simply for Monster X to bash Zilla's skull repeatedly against nearby structures. After multiple blows, Zilla released its grip, simply for Monster X then to discharge a gravity bolt. Stunned by the energy blast, Zilla was unable to move as Monster X rammed into the creature to the ground. The ground cracked from each blow Monster X pounded across Godzilla's face to reveal its strength. Blood began to flow into the street, yet the feature did not interest the alien, nor did the screeches of agony. Only the beast's demise would satisfy the Monster X's pride. Pass. Pass.
Nagoda.
Nagoda.
Oh, it's my turn.
Nagoda.
Yeah, you
Where
get
are we at?
You get the fun part in a massive crater.
Okay. In a massive crater on Long Island, filled with the debris of dozens of structures, Kiryu and the remains of Gigan laid motionless. Then, a wave of electromagnetic energy washed across his metal shell. Systems reactivated in the face of the bursts of energy, and slowly, Kiryu returned to consciousness. Cameras moved inside the cockpit of the cyborg and looked over at Akane. Blood seeped from her helmet, and her breaths were present but weak. Deciding it best to reactivate rather than wait for her revival, the ghost in the shell took hold. Kiryu rose from its fresh grave and scanned the city in the distance. Whether it be from man, monster, or alien, it would accomplish its purpose there. The machine took a few steps before a new roar echoed across the city and attracted its attention. The machine opened its jaws, as if inhaling, before it returned the roar with a mechanical version of its own. Akane slowly came out of her unconsciousness from the battle cry and movement. The pilot at first thought she was mistaken, or that she was suffering from Where was that? Sorry,
The
someone walked in.
pilot was at first thought mistaken, or that she was suffering.
Okay. The pilot at first thought she was mistaken, or that she was suffering from a concussion as she wiped the blood off her face, only to look at the screens to see Kiryu actually moving. "You're awake," Akane weakly spoke, causing Kiryu to stop. Cameras inside the cockpit readjusted, and a harsh static filled the metal room. Akane winced from the noise before it stopped, and the screens in front of her changed from Kiryu's optical sensors to a few lines of text on a black screen. It read, "I was unable to reach peace even in my tomb. Eternal peace was out of my grasp as long as I stayed in the shell. Those damn space nebula cockroaches lied to me. I shall be your shield." "I shall be your shield and your sword until I am but dust. Then I shall rest eternally once again." Akane, still waking up, at first was confused by Kiryu's statement until something clicked in her mind. "So you can't rest until you are destroyed?" Akane inquired to Kiryu. A single line appeared on the screen which read, Correct. Akane nodded as she understood Kiryu's plight. And its only way to rest was to fight. And that was why the cyborg had returned. Japan would never have allowed an expensive deconstruction, so she understood why Kiryu had done what it did. I promised them to help you, so are you ready for one final mission, Kiryu? Akane questioned, only for Kiryu to suddenly roar into the sky and continue towards the city. Where are we going? Akane asked, only to get another message on the screen. It read, to help a friend. Monique sent a volley of jabs at X, only for the alien to dodge them with ease. A final kick sent the alien evading towards Randy, who tried to ram the Kaiser. Are you humans even trying? X inquired as he caught Randy and lifted him and tossed him to the ground. Nick leapt over Randy and threw a punch, only for X to catch it, unable to get out of his grasp. Oh. Okay, I'll eat in a bit. How long is this thing? I'll finish this thing and then I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Unable to get out of X's grasp, Nick threw another punch with his free hand, only for X to catch it as well. Before Nick could do anything else, X released his grip and delivered a powerful punch to the scientist's gut. Nick flew backward before impacting an air conditioning grate. The metal bent around him before the scientist fell to the ground in anguish. With two teammates down, Monique pulled out a knife and lunged at X. X deflected each killing blow using a few fingers before he caught the blade an inch from his face. Monique pressed the knife down with all the strength in her right arm, yet X remained unfazed. You really want to kill me? Come on, you're so... Monique launched her left arm at X's head, yet like her right, he easily grabbed her arm. As X grinned, Monique smiled back and opened her fist to reveal a flashbang. X jumped away, but it was detonated too quickly, sending Monique and X staggering backward. Blind but not without a chance, Monique threw her knife while Randy ran toward the leader. The blade struck X's upper torso, but the alien spun around and delivered a powerful kick to Randy's abdomen, stopping him cold. Randy dropped to the ground, grimacing from the strike. However, X tossed the knife away and walked toward Monique. Good moves for a human, but you're no Kaiser. X charged at Monique, who barely saw the punches come. X thrust a punch toward her gut, a powerful punch to her gut, which caused the agent to reel, only for the exalien to slam her back with his fist. After his opponent impacted the ground, X watched amusingly as Monique tried to lift herself up to no avail. You humans, no matter how well trained, can only do so much, whereas I do not have such a limit, X remarked as he lifted his foot over Monique's back. Hey X! Someone yelled from behind the exalien. The Kaiser turned around only to see Randy's fist. Apparently this is Randy's voice now. X stumbled and tripped to the ground after a punch to his face by the intern. As his sunglasses broke, rage flowed through X's body from such an act. How dare you! X yelled as he turned his attention back on Randy, who was kneeling next to Monique. I am the leader of the exaliens. I am... X spun and caught Elsie and Mendel by the throats, causing the metal rods in their hand to drop to the floor. Getting really tired of you cattle. How about her? Elsie squeaked. X raised an eyebrow at the statement before a laser blast struck him in the back. Two more followed, striking his shoulder and chest before he blocked the fourth shot and discovered Audrey holding an exalien weapon. X bared his teeth and discharged a bolt of lightning while Audrey fired another shot. The two collided directly in front of the reporter, blasting Audrey off her feet and sending her to the ground, and the gun flying toward the exalien ship. A metal clang drew X away from Audrey as Nick swung a metal rod toward the alien. X evaded to the right and struck him down with his palm, yet a new pain echoed from his back. X smacked the attacker behind him away, then pulled a knife lodged into his back out. X yelled, then grabbed Randy by the throat and picked him up. Enough! X yelled before he plunged the knife into Randy's lower chest and tossed him at the exalien craft. With one opponent down,
Yay!
yeah, he stabbed someone. With one opponent down, X grabbed Nick by the head and lifted him off the ground. X almost laughed at the human's feeble attempts to stand as his legs shook from the lack of stamina. You are the leader? So, who should I kill next? I am the leader of the team. You want someone to kill? Then kill me first, Nick yelled, merely for X to strike his chest with his palm. Nick flew backward and slid across the roof, while X smiled and walked toward him. As you wish, the Kaiser gladly commented. Randy grimaced as he...
Nagoda?
I think he just died.
Damn.
Alright, I'm back.
Randy grimaced as he slowed.
I'm just gonna read this paragraph and go, because they're all eating. Alright. Randy grimaced as he slowly rose to his feet inside the Exilian craft. The knife in his abdomen burned like fire, but he couldn't stop. Can you guys hear the dog, by the way?
No.
Okay,
Just keep going.
good. Noise suppression is doing his job. As he barely stood, he noticed Nigel, who had discharged his tether line in the crash. An idea suddenly popped into the intern's head as he grabbed the cable, secured Nigel to the inside of the ship, and then activated the special feature he had installed on the robot the other day. After putting the line in his back pocket, he left the ship and found Elsie as well as Mendel on the ground next to the fighter. Pass so I can go eat.
Alright, Alex.
Mendel,
See you, man.
so you got the engineer's attention. Can you and Elsie push that thing? Mendel looked up at him and nodded while Elsie gave him a thumbs up. Good, push at the signal, Randy gasped, as the intern began to slowly stumble toward X, who did not notice the intern as he mercilessly broke Nick's right arm. Good, Randy discovered. Audrey's weapon raised at the Kaiser. Hey, Diablo, Randy proclaimed before firing the auxiliary energy weapon at X, who was about to finish off Nick with an energy blast from his hand. X shrieked as he was hit twice with the auxiliary weapon by surprise, before returning his attention on the battered Randy. A deathly star shot out of X's eye. In an instant, X closed the distance between the bears, smacked the gun away, grabbed Randy by the throat again, and pushed the knife deeper in his body. Thank God. You humans are really starting to become a thorn in my side, the Kaiser stated as he increased the pressure on Randy's neck. Any last words before I snap your neck in two, or would you like to die by your friend's weapon? Randy chuckled, only then to say, yeah, I have something. Then as loudly as he could speak so Mendel could hear, the intern hollered, Mendel, shotgun. Oh, epic red versus blue reference.
Technically, it was set up in the first bit, which you missed.
Damn.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Only then for X to squeeze Randy's windpipe so tight that he could not breathe. Those were your last words? X inquired harshly. Has the oxygen loss made you lose your already deficient mind? Randy turned his head slightly to discover Mendel and Elise pushing the Exilian fighter. Randy started chuckling, and a smile formed on his face before he whispered, X, can I ask you one last thing? X smiled and pushed the knife deeper in his body. Please go on. Can Exilians fly? Randy questioned with a huge smirk on his face. What kind of question is that? X inquired, only then to feel something around his waist. Kaiser looked down, only to see that the intern had attached some type of tether to his clothing. Before the Exilian could ask what it was, the Exilian fighter fell off the roof. Randy yelled as the knife was pulled out of him and fell to the ground while X slid across the roof. Kaiser dug his hands onto the structure, and as he passed Mendel, X flew off the rooftop's edge, a trail of blood following him. Randy grinned as he fell to his knees and heard the thud of the ship impacting the streets below. Got him! I'm a douchebag. Before Crafty overcame his strength too, the intern dropped to the cool roof as the warm blood pooled around his form. Monique stumbled over to him, flipping the young man over, placing her hand on the open wound. Wow, didn't know you had a halo. Randy weakly quipped as his face turned white. Monique removed a litter and looked at the wound. You will be fine, just hold on. Randy's whole head rolled back and he weakly laughed. Jet Li won't. Nigel's got a present for him. X slowly opened his eyes, his teeth gritted as he noticed the large man-made structure he fell off of. The Kaiser gradually lifted, breaking apart the dry blood across him and spilling the rest onto the fire as he currently rested inside of. Parts of his human disguise peeled off as his alien body rose up. But he was still alive. Those pathetic humans today think they could kill him so easily. No human could stop him. He was a king, an unstoppable warrior. Go. Hey, ugly. Exilian spun electricity dancing around his right arm to discover a strange yellow robot. Did you speak, Scrap? Exilian's head turned, and in the voice of an older military officer exclaimed, Damn right, split jaw, and you're... Oh, God. X discharged a burst of energy across the robot. Sparks discharged from every joint, and the robot twitched uncontrollably, but a steady static began to echo from the machine. Send me out with a bang. Was that an epic Halo reference?
It was.
Was that all a reference to Red versus Blue?
That was not a reference to Red versus Blue.
That was a reference to Halo.
Right,
Yes.
but Red versus
like-
Blue did start off using Master Chief recolors, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's Sergeant Johnson. You just finish off the paragraph and you'll understand why.
On that distant instant detonated bathing X in a wave of white light. The fighter followed the small robot explode as well. As the fires died, nothing remained in the blast radius except for metal and ash. Pass.
Okay.
Damn.
Zilla skidded backwards after a successful kick by Monster X. As the lizard stopped, Zilla fell to the ground and exhaled deeply. Blood splattered across the streets with every breath, but he could not stop. He needed to win. He couldn't let his home fall. Monster X charged full speed towards Zilla. The lizard hunched in preparation to launch forward, merely for a silver object to slam a high speed into Monster X. The alien plowed into the structure adjacent to him, causing the large dust cloud to encompass the area for a few brief seconds. As it faded, Zilla watched Kiryu emerge from the shroud of debris. So this is the Godzilla of New York, Akane stated as Kiryu scanned Zilla. Not what I expected. Kiryu then turned to face Monster X before the machine echoed a harsh metallic cry. Monster X wasted little time admiring its new foe before the fiend sprinted toward the android and then jumped to deliver a powerful kick. Kiryu used its arms as a shield and took the full force of the blow, which caused the robot to skid backward. To stop the slide, the robot's thrusters roared to life, causing it to propel the android directly at the fiend. Monster X took the full force of the ram, but remained on his feet as he skidded backward. Kiryu continued the assault as it deployed its single remaining wrist blade after its impact with Gigan. The android jabbed Monster X, driving the sword deep into the fiend's chest cavity before the blade discharged electricity. The Exilian creature roared in agony as its internal organs fried, but Monster X would not submit to such an attack and unleashed a point-blank gravity beam at Kiryu. The blast forced the android to retract its blade, as well as move away while Monster X charged towards the mech. As Monster X readied to cripple the machine, Zilla dashed from the side, chomped down on its arm, and pinned the Exilian creature to a building. Monster X swiped the multiple reptiles' face, forcing Zilla to release its grip, but Kiryu countered quickly with the twin maser blast on Monster X. Zilla, to assist its new ally, discharged its green heat ray. After prolonged use, both monsters ended their respective weapons to find Monster X relatively unscathed. This thing can take a beating, Akane noted, almost impressed. Akane, seeing that Monster X was too heavily armored to fight with normal weapons, checked out the total supply left. Levels reached at 75%, which meant that Kiryu could fire one final shot at the Absolute Zero cannon. Not like a gun cannon, but like the biblical cannon. So, it's totally... Absolute Zero is totally canon.
Oh.
A delightful...
Oh, it's canon?
Yes, it is.
We can use it in the KUC?
Yes, absolutely.
Whoa.
A delightful find considering the early fight with Gigan in addition to the massive Exilian fighter force she had destroyed. Kiryu's chest cavity opened and a swirling mass of blue energy started to form. Monster X stared with curiosity before it sensed something off about the move. While Monster X channeled energy to its eyes, Zilla jumped onto the fiend's back and bit down on its shoulder. Okay, just hold him for a few... Monster X elbowed Zilla into the street, and with Zilla reeling the aliens And with Zilla reeling, the alien slowly turned toward Kiryu with proper surging across its eyes. Monster X took a few steps before he launched himself at the cyborg. Akane slammed the launch sequence, while Monster X thrust his left arm towards the blue orb. The sapphire energy burst forward, washing over Monster X's form like water. As the monster froze in place, Akane held a sigh of relief even as sirens beeped across Kiryu's control center. I guess half power will work, Akane remarked as she leaned back into her chair. A loud bang brought her attention back to the screen to discover Zilla's tail. Now where Monster X originally stood, with large amounts of brown dust filling her view. What? Hang on. I think this will make sense in about 5 seconds. The pilot motioned her head in disbelief before dozens of objects appeared on her radar. Fear of them being Exilian vanished as the identification numbers appeared. Dozens of American jet fighters, in addition to multiple Apaches, flew over the android as they flew towards the mothership in an attack run. She watched the air movements with a familiar aerial vessel, far larger than anything else in the sky, flew overhead with a familiar voice came over the radio. Hey Akane, are you still alive in that thing? Susumu comically shouted over the radio. Akane changed frequencies and replied, For now, recharge needed. You're damn lucky the Exilians have nothing but their reserve fighters to guard the mothership. I would have had to decline, the Shirasagi pilot remarked as he positioned the vessel over Kiryu. Though where is your friend going? Akane shifted her view back to the cameras to watch Zilla disappear into the city a few blocks away. As Akane scanned frequencies for a possible threat, Kiryu began to walk after the creature. Where the hell are you going, Akane? Susumu yelled as the robot disconnected from the Shirasagi's wireless energy transfer. It's not me, Susumu, Akane responded. You mean it has gone berserk again? You made me give you power? Why the hell didn't you tell me? It has been alive the entire time, Susumu, but I need to know where it's headed? What? That is so strangely... Akane questioned as she gave up trying to control the android. It won't go berserk again. I promise, just please. Before Akane could ask anything else, screams started over the radio. Hello, can anyone hear me? This is Lieutenant Bro. We are currently engaged at 3rd Avenue against unknown creature. We are losing. We need immediate support. Oh shit, it's aiming. Help! Static ended the plea for help before Susumu watched a large cloud of fire explode in the distance from his Shirasagi.
Was this lieutenant named after Ford Brody?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's in my universe. I killed him off. You're welcome, everyone.
Damn.
The most inoffensive character gets killed off for no reason. Damn.
But he's the worst character ever. He doesn't emote.
That's still Rick, though. I'd rather take Ford Brody over Rick.
Damn. Insane.
Akane afterward realized the situation being played out. The Exilians had one last trick up their sleeve, and Kiryu as well as Zilla had just sensed its arrival. Susumu, engage the mothership. I'll engage our newest problem, Akane explained over the radio. Roger, Akane, the pilot declared before he flew toward the shieldless mothership. Hicks grouped his forces at Central Park after overhearing the screams of the destroyed division. Whatever was coming was monstrous, and with no recon, the Major readied his forces for anything. Tanks plowed down trees, men placed sandbags and artillery vehicles ready to fire. Though as minutes passed from the radio message, Hicks' troops spotted something approaching, but nothing he would have guessed. It was not a monster, nor was it an alien, but a small, relatively dented car. As the Major looked down through his binoculars, he smiled as he noticed his favorite scientist driving it. The car stopped in front of the Major's vehicle before Nick, Elsie, Audrey, Mendel, and Monique carrying Randy exited the vehicle. Good to see you, Tatopoulos, the Major asserted while he watched Nick limp towards him with his arm in a hastily made sling. I'm guessing that the mothership shields falling in the destruction of the Exilian fighter force are of your credit, since your teammates are miraculously back? My team's, but not mine. My team's, but not mine, Major. Nick replied, though before I say anything, can you spare a medic for my team? Randy in particular needs urgent attention. Nah, just bleeding out, Randy moaned. Of course, but right now I wish your lizard was here to topple us. Hicks replied as he signaled some of his men to escort the wounded to the field medics. Elsie and Nick were the only two left after the medics forcibly escorted the seriously injured away, which included everyone else. You two look like you have gone through hell, Hicks asserted as he scanned Elsie in addition to Nick. Sure you don't want to see the medic? After you explained why you need Zilla? Nick demanded while ignoring his agonizing bruises and broken bones. Something is headed this way and I have no idea what it is other than it isn't friendly, the Major explained as he looked toward the city. Though with you here I should be able to identify the monster. Plus, Zilla can't be too far away if you're here. Subsequently, larger impact tremors started shaking Hicks's entire division as something approached from the park. There! A nearby soldier yelled after he noticed something above the buildings. Hicks, Nick, in addition to Elsie, looked to see the large hump followed by the entirety of the creature as it entered the park. The creature possessed a massive hunchback, was dark gray in color, large fangs as well as claws, and had massive hole in its shoulder for its energy beam. The monster scanned the park before it found its target and screeched into the air a sickening sound. Well, it's ugly, the Major noted before Elsie replied in terror. That's what they wanted before. Nick turned to his teammate and asked, What do you mean? They had me develop G-cells that possessed the M-base, Elsie explained as she scanned what she had inadvertently created. So what is it? Hicks demanded as he grabbed his radio to order his troops to fire. Orga, Nix replied before he realized the full reality of the situation. Major, you can't kill this thing, Nick yelled as he left Elsie to persuade the soldier. Then I'll make it bleed, Hicks proclaimed before he ordered into his radio. All forces engage this ugly bastard. That's sudden for him to know, but alright. Orga bellowed in annoyance as Hicks' division unleashed its full fury on the beast. After a full minute of assaulting the alien, Hicks' ordered a ceasefire to see what damage had been done. The smoke around the creature cleared away from Orga, only to reveal small wounds that had almost instantly healed. It can regenerate, Major, Nick yelled before explained. It can instantly recover. Unless you have something to kill every cell in its body at once, you have to retreat. Oh gee, I wonder what's going to happen. Anyway, as Orga started to advance, Hicks, against his willingness to avenge those who fell in line of duty, ordered a full retreat. The massive division opened fire on the beast to stop its advance so they could escape, merely for the alien's shoulder to glow yellow. Then as Orga was about to fire, Zilla entered the park and rammed into the alien. Orga fired its plasma cannon, once again there's that plasma is officially canon, into the air to the Exilian's dismay.
We can use that in the KUC now.
Yes, we can. To the alien's dismay before it swiped Zilla away with its large hand. As Zilla and Orga started to brawl and Kiryu entered the park. Zilla and Orga started to brawl and Kiryu entered the park. Nick gathered his now bandaged team in addition to rode with Hicks in a troop transport. Yeah, I'm so glad Nick rode a Hicks. Take that as you want. So do you or your team to Topless have any suggestions on how dealing with this new creature? Hicks inquired as his division retreated at full speed away from the park. Unless you have a weapon that could strike it on a molecular level, then it's invincible against us, Elsie retorted, with her head sunk in sadness in her voice. I should have realized what the Exilians were planning. You didn't know, Mendel commented, trying to relieve his friend's emotional pain. Randy picked at the bandages on his lower chest before dizziness manifested itself in thought. So, does this seem familiar to anyone? Could freezing work? Hicks questioned as he remembered Kiryu's unique weapon. Randy shook his head as he tried to picture the memory. Hello? Z-Man? Metal Godzilla? And the alien thing? Was that a reference to match 133? Or 130?
Keep it up.
130? Nice.
Keep it up.
Would you need to hit... You would need to hit every cell, Elsie replied before she asked, why? Antarctica, hot Japanese girl, and Hefe finding his teacher? Yeah, that is. That's cute. I think I have just the weapon. Hicks responded with a confident grin. Is anyone listening? Randy commented, only for everyone in unison. No! Everyone, the troop transport, stared at him for a few seconds before he said, Hey, sorry. Got some serious deja vu. Must be hits to the head or the blood loss. Also, remember me turning into a robot? Weird. Nick shook his head at Randy's mental problems before he proclaimed, It's our best option against it. With no other ideas, Hicks grabbed his radio and said, Lieutenant Akane, this is Major Hicks. Glad to see you're still alive, but do you read? Over. The radio remained silent a few moments until Kiryu's pilot responded. I read you, and it's good to hear from you, Major, considering our lost conversation. Same here, Lieutenant, but I'm guessing you have found the newest problem in the city, the Major stated, while he secretly felt relief that Akane was still alive. The android's freezing device is the only thing powerful enough to destroy this thing. Can you fire it? Roger, Major. Until then, I will help Zilla in holding it off so your men can escape. The help is obliged, ma'am? And good luck.
Ma'am.
Ma'am.
Hicks asserted with a small bit of concern in his voice. Will do, Major, Akane answered before she ended her radio. From within New York, far away from the park, a fresh pile of rubble began to move. Slowly, a mound began to form as white pieces of flesh poked through the growing spaces. As the rubble finally gave way, Monster X stood from his grave. The beast scanned his body. Flesh felt air on the left side of his body. His left arm was no more, and he could feel the cold inflicted injuries impairing his every movement. With a simple exhale, the alien warrior ignored all those injuries and dashed at full speed toward the park. It was no longer about challenges or testing his abilities. It was now about his supremacy, and no creature would take that right away from him. Pass.
After a few devastating strikes by Orga's claws, Zilla was unable to move while Orga chomped down on the reptile's shoulder. The beast's face afterwards started to change as Zilla's DNA was absorbed into its body. Small spikes started jutting out of Orga's back. Its tail elongated and its claws shrunk slightly. Before the alien could absorb any more biological information, Zilla unleashed a concentrated burst of its heat ray on Orga's shoulder. The blast burned a massive chunk of Orga's body, causing the alien to let go of the reptile. Zilla dashed away before glancing back at the abomination and discovered that the wound he had inflicted was gone. As Orga began to walk towards Zilla to gather more genetic material, Kiryu blindsided the beast with its twin mazer. They didn't say twin mazer cannon. Kiryu's energy weapon only stunned the Goliath long enough for the android to move in and deliver a few kinetic strikes. Sharp metallic claws swiped across the alien's face, simply for the wounds to instantly heal to Akane's dismay. After 3 more swipes from the cyborg, Orga grabbed the android in a powerful vice grip. Unable to break the alien's hold, Orga bit onto the cyborg's shoulder. Gaining life form expected DNA, but to his shock, this creature was not biological, but mechanical. The find confused Orga's inept mind, but the shock left it wide open as Kiryu ejected its blade. Kiryu sent the sword into the alien's chest cavity and gashed a massive wound in its chest while pumping Orga full of electricity. The anguish forced Orga to release his grip, but Kiryu kept up the assault. The android plunged the blade into the alien's neck and continued to pump electricity into the beast, merely for Orga to smack Kiryu away. The blade snapped off while still inside of Orga as Kiryu flew rearward into some trees of the park. Orga screeched in pain as it clawed the blade out of its skin, giving Kiryu enough time to recover to its feet. Akane then checked to see if Kiryu's Absolute Zero cannon was ready, and to her luck, it was prepared to fire. Time to finish this, Kiryu, Akane stated as she prepared the android's ultimate weapon. Kiryu, without Akane's piloting, roared into the sky, a sign that Kiryu's artificial intelligence agreed with the pilot as the machine's chest doors opened. A massive blue light started to form in the android's chest, and in response, Orga stared with wonder. Zilla, to distract the alien, jumped on its backside and started clawing at the alien. Orga screamed, frenzied, and tried to grab a hold of the reptile with its massive claws, to no avail. With its physical attacks failing, Orga started charging its shoulder cannon, so if Zilla slipped, it could blast the reptile into oblivion. "Move," Kiryu's pilot commented as she watched the pair struggle. Then, as the pilot ready to fire the weapon, the unthinkable occurred. Orga's thrashing caused Zilla to slip, and the alien grabbed the reptile. In a show of godly strength by the alien, Orga threw Zilla through a line of structures that surrounded the park. With the distraction gone, Akane activated the cannon as Orga unleashed its charged plasma cannon on the android. Orga's blast was the first to fire, as well as impact, as it detonated on Kiryu's broken but still present arm cannon. The explosion destroyed Kiryu's hand while also spinning the machine. While the machine rotated, Kiryu unleashed the Absolute Zero cannon. The freezing sphere discharged and flew at the alien, but only succeeded in freezing half the abomination due to Kiryu's forced rotation. The sphere, after crystallizing half of Orga, continued to fly until it had frozen a block of worth of buildings. Both Kiryu and Orga afterward fell to the ground. Akane covered her eyes as Kiryu's control panel sparked in addition to flash from the destruction of Kiryu's right arm. After the light show ended, Akane was greeted with messages of critical failure as well as structural integrity warnings. The pilot tried to force Kiryu to its feet, but the machine was immobile. After fighting hundreds of Exilian fighters, Gigan, Monster X, and now Orga, Kiryu suffered too much impairment. Missiles and energy bolts impacted the mothership's armor to no avail. Susumu gritted his teeth as he conducted another ineffective run with the Shirasagi before blasting a dozen Exilian fighters that dared cross his path. Hey, focus on the fighters. That thing will need a hell of a warhead to pierce its... The screens on the vessel suddenly illuminated with warnings of Kiryu's status. One of the cyborg's arms were completely red, indicating destruction, and most of its systems were offline. The pilot eyes widened as the screen indicated that life support was included on the list of broken systems. "Damn you, Akane," Susumu yelled as he piloted Shirasagi toward the park. "You're dying that easily." Kiryu stumbled from the destroyed block and quickly focused on Orga's growing form. The lizard inhaled as deeply as his lungs would allow him and funneled all the power he could muster into the back of his jaws. Green flames burst from his sides of his maw, yet a familiar screech caught Zilla's intention. I think it's attention, not intention. Yeah. Without a second thought, Zilla spun and discharged its atomic ray at the fast-approaching Monster X. Monster X brought up his right arm as he ran toward the beast, which took the direct hit of the ray. The beam at first detonated across the alien's form, but Monster X continued charging through the attack. Green flames surged over Monster X until the beast finally burst through the attack and struck Zilla's head with his right arm. Zilla stumbled backward and shook his head before he looked back at Monster X. Smoke flowed off the alien's exposed burnt flesh on his left side. His white armor possessed cracks as smoke billowed from beneath. Bone protruded from the creature's sides as ribs struggled to heal in their correct formation. The sight caused Zilla to tremble slightly, but he couldn't run. He would fight. He had to fight. The pair rushed toward the other, colliding with monumental force. Following the collision, Zilla sunk its teeth into the steaming flesh of the alien, but even using all its strength, the lizard could not force Monster X backward. A point-blank energy blast by Monster X blasted Zilla backward, who then returned the spike with a tail swipe at the alien's warrior's exposed flesh. Monster X screeched in annoyance, but the calculated strike would not make him fall. Gravity bolts discharged from the alien warrior with an unparalleled frenzy. Sparks cascaded across Zilla's form until a final blast blew the beast off its feet and to the ground. Zilla tried to move, but he had no more strength to give. A small sadistic grin formed on Monster X. He walked over and placed his heel on the lizard's head. Gradually, the alien pressed more and more pressure onto the beast's head. He had won against the lower life form, and now was his chance to... Two claws wrapped around Monster X and yanked him backward. Within seconds, the alien found itself inside of Orga's expanded maw. The alien warrior unleashed a plethora of gravity bolts and pulled with all his might, yet as the darkness surrounded him, he discovered a fate far worse than defeat. Orga processed the new source of fresh DNA and screeched as his body adapted. His form slimmed down, his skin became white as armor overtook its thin skin, and two bulbous minor heads formed beside his own. The large hole in his shoulder closed, and his arms became humanoid with multiple fingers to clutch with his still oversized hands. Red eyes now greeted all who looked upon the new creature, while its twin tails smacked the ground with anticipation of all the carnage it could unleash. Monster X perished in this chimera's creation. An organism of X was all that remained.
Orga, more like Porga.
I just want to make note. He almost killed the monster. Monster X was almost competent, but he got a betrayal by his team. Friendly fire.
Damn.
Susumu piloted the airship. Oh, sorry. Orga X crackled into the heavens of its creation. I believe it's cackled. Merely for the red rain to pelt his form. Smoke sizzled off the creature's skin, drawing its attention to the Shirasagi that challenged its existence. Susumu piloted the airship to conduct another pass, yet a blast of yellow greeted the ship first. The right wing blasted apart, sending the vessel into a spin. Susumu struggled to level out, merely to crash across the park. A trail of fire formed behind the vessel, and as it came to a stop, Orga X followed its destructive wake. Sirens and warnings roared in the command room, annoying Susumu to no end. The pilot pulled out the emergency eject to escape his surroundings, but a high-pitched hydraulic squeal was the only thing to occur. Susumu pulled it repeatedly, but as the wreck he found himself in began to shake, the pilot glanced out of his cockpit. In the distance, the stagnant form of Kiryu lay. Akane gave up trying to get Kiryu up before she just activated Kiryu's optical sensor to discover the Shirasagi. The pilot slammed her fist into the control panel, but before she grabbed her radio. "Susumu, do you read?" Akane pleaded, merely to hear the sound of coughing. "Yeah, damn thing has good aim. Thanks for the heads up, by the way. I'll have Kiryu up soon. You just eject. It's busted with everything else. And your wreck?" Akane pulled up a systems diagnostic and replied, "Nothing. Weapons are completely gone." "What about flight systems?" Susumu inquired. Akane opened up the subsystem as she struggled to lift Kiryu. "I think I can get it up. Just hold on. I think I almost have Kiryu up." The shadow of Orga X consumed Susumu in his control panel before he continued. "Akane, I've got another crazy idea. Fly this bastard into the mothership for me." Akane looked up, watching Orga lift his leg up to smash the Shirasagi. Immediately, the pilot pushed every joint to its limit. The cyborg's gears grinded forward. Kiryu pushed itself off the ground, but Susumu knew it wasn't fast enough. "Hey, Akane, you're a good soldier. I'll let my brother know not to kick your ass when he sees you. Sayonara, Yoshiro." Orga X brought his foot through the Shirasagi, smashing the vessel to pieces. Flames encompassed the creature from the resulting explosion. Yet Inferno paled to the fire that ignited inside Akane. Tears of fury rolled down her face. "Kiryu!" Akane yelled angrily. "I need you to fight! I need you to help me! Kiryu!" Screens around Akane went red. All the sirens deactivated and Kiryu rose to its feet. Orga X roared a challenge to Kiryu, but the cyborg did not retort its call. An ancient creature roared from within the titanium shell. A monster that made humanity originally fear all kaiju almost 60 years prior. A terror far more powerful than the metal shell that bonded it to the physical world. Piercing red eyes took hold of the cyborg before the Revenant of Gojira charged. The two monsters collided with shocking force, with neither giving in to the other before the android grabbed Orga X's right arm. A turbocharged spin with its thrusters sent the Chimera sliding across the ground before the creature impacted a building. Orga X almost instantly recovered and discharged a yellow atomic beam from its maw. Kiryu's thrusters roared to life again as the android blasted left to dodge the enemy strike, only to then fly toward the alien. The cyborg's arm collapsed, a drill forming from its appendage before the beast thrusted its arm through Orga's head. Orga's eyes at first rolled backward, but after a few seconds they focused on his opponent. Its eyes glowed with energy. Its maw glowed yellow. Wait, what?
No, atomic ray from...
It absorbed Zilla.
Yeah.
Oh!
It absorbed Zilla's DNA at first.
Okay. I completely missed.
It's just mostly
okay.
monster.
Right. Okay. No, not bad.
Good. Remember this? Kiryu's abdomen opened, revealing the Absolute Zero cannon. The abomination screeched at the sight, dark memories flooding its mind. In response, Monster X thrust its left arm deep inside Kiryu's chest cavity. A small explosion occurred, masking the dozens of cables that launched from within the cyborg and entangled the two. Orga X screeched in surprise while Akane grinned in satisfaction. Kiryu's thrusters roared to life, and the two monsters took flight. Orga X struggled in the cyborg's grip, tearing at the wires, sending the two in a chaotic trajectory. However, the Abomination's movement could not make Kiryu miss the only power strong enough to eliminate every cell in the Chimera's body. The pair slammed into the Exilian mothership and breached the levels with ease. Orga X acted as a ram, going through the layers of the mothership's insides until they impacted the core. In the brief seconds before the shockwave impacted Kiryu, Akane smiled. She did not smile of a fallen comrade, her action saving the city or completing Kiryu's wishes. In a few moments, Akane knew she would be speaking to the man she wronged all those years prior. The collision overloaded the generator and instantly ignited the powering device. The ensuing force shattered the entire mothership before vaporizing most of the remaining alien material. The massive shockwave shattered every window close to the implosion, in addition to causing the damaged structures throughout the city to sway. The residual shrapnel fell upon New York, specifically Central Park, sending massive dust clouds into the air. Zilla rose as the shockwave raced across his form. The beast looked around the shrouds of dust, curious to where his ally and enemies were, only to notice a familiar piece of metal. Upon further study, Zilla recognized it as part of Kiryu's head. It was the top of its metal skull, and a single eye which was still glowing red. Then, without any power left, the metallic eye flickered and slowly shut down. A friendly roar then shifted Zilla's attention away. The beast lifted its head to discover an ancient leviathan made of the surrounding dust. Zilla studied the creature as his instincts told him it was the same as the metal monster that had saved him previously. As the smoke started to clear, the ancient Godzilla sent one last deafening roar to remind the Earth of its eternal presence, to which Zilla followed with its own. The two creatures shook New York with their triumphant calls until the ancient Godzilla's roar faded along with its dusty form. As the ash finally settled, Zilla sluggishly walked toward the river. Without even knowing Kiryu's story, Zilla sensed she was finally at peace.
She? I guess Akane?
Yeah. No, Kiryu.
Oh, so Gogeta was a female in this universe.
Because
that
it all ties back to Megaguirus, Mothra Leo, and Mecha King Ghidorah's fight.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But yes, as a little note, yeah, in this version, the 1954 is female.
Okay.
So, confused. Kane dead too, or?
Yes.
Bro, you just killed off the most likable character.
Timmins residence, 1 week later. Audrey watched the sun set down the streets of New York from her apartment. The warm glow gave her solace in its descent, but a creak at her door gave her comfort she could not compare. About time, so how'd they take it? Nick smirked as he walked up beside her and rested his chin on her shoulder. Oh, constant complaining until I mentioned the payment part. Not sure what they'll do in that year, but we all need the rest, some more so than others. Speaking of that, I am going to have to take a look for a new career considering my place of employment is gone, Audrey stated, humorously to her boyfriend. Nick just laughed as well, but moved away. Well, I'd better ask this before you find another profession, Nick nervously stated. The scientist quickly moved in front of Audrey in the direction of the sunset, knelt on one knee, and pulled out the small box he looked at for clarity. Audrey's eyes glowed with happiness, as Nick opened the small box to reveal a ring which he said with all his heart. I had this thing for a long time. It's from my family, and I always thought about giving it to you. I thought, when the world was safe, I would finally propose. Then years passed with no change. I may not be able to stop every disaster, but it hit me that I don't have to go as long as I have you by my side. Audrey couldn't help but laugh at Nick's approach, but she replied with tears in her eyes, and I always will. That moment, as the two embraced each other in their arms, Nick thought of the future. Hell could appear at any time, from the sky, from others, or even from himself. The pain brought could be monstrous, the results unexpected, but in the end, he needed to survive it. For Audrey, for his team, for those that fought beside him, the storm of his life would never truly end. Breaks may form, but the storm would no doubt return stronger. Nick knew this, but for as long as he could stay afloat, he would spend it with the person that could weather it with him. X2 gazed upon Earth from the Exilian UFO that managed to escape the destruction of the mothership. The new leader could understand why so many races desired the Blue Pearl, yet with his race's failure understood why it was untouched. Mysterian, Leviathan, Keelok, and even his own kind failed to grasp the planet for eons, starting with the first invasion of his kind eons prior. It was not a matter of technology, invulnerability, race, or firepower, but the determination of its inhabitants. Humanity and its allies could not be crushed with Exilian might alone. To combat such a presence, X2 knew only one force that could match it. A combined force, a universal force, and its origination can only be found in one place. X2 turned back to the remaining crew, the last of his kind. Take us back to Planet X. Gather all remaining inhabitants and chart a course out of the system. The Exilians took great note of the last order, glaring at X2 with shocked expressions. They will surely kill us all, an Exilian remarked, but X2 ignored the comment. We are already dead if we do not venture forth from our exile. We must unite with the Empire. The crew remained still until slowly they scattered in all directions to begin the long journey. X2, meanwhile, looked back upon the Earth. Its inhabitants could rest for now, rebuilding with the knowledge that they won the battle. But in time, they would divide like they did after the first invasion, split apart, and left weak from their own kind, and in their conflict, they would strike again. In their weakness, humanity would fall, and every race in the galaxy would gain vengeance on the sins of humanity's past. All that was needed was the perfect catalyst. Winner, Zilla.
Really, the winner should be Kiru. I'm kidding. Last Survivor thing, I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. You know what? I'm also going to say this. One shot. We are one-shotting these long boys.
Yeah, I'm telling you, we got this done in 2.5 hours.
Technically over 3 hours, but, well, give or take.
Really?
About 3 hours, yeah. But maybe deduct like 15 minutes from the waiting. But yeah, about 3 hours.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. So this was match 164 was the longest match for a good long while. Then match 200 happened. So we'll get to that when we get there. And then match 275 happened. And then match 318 happened. So we'll see how much bigger they get from here. But all I know is that KWC ain't gonna get smaller from here because we got a lot more to go. But that will be for another season. So for my personal thoughts, I am gonna say I like the story. I didn't mind the story beats in the way things were paced. However, I do think there were a couple of elements that could have been altered or removed. Like, it's hard to say, because the Orga one made sense. I think that one was built up properly. And I think that just, Orga made sense. He was the final boss type character. And his role made sense. What I think would have been better for balancing purposes is, unless this happens later down the road or it's revisited, remove Monster X and expand on Gigan and Megalon. I think those two could have held the match. Like, Megalon could have made a comeback, Gigan could have been a little bit more durable rather than dying after his first bout with Kiru. Or Megalon could have came back after his first bout with Zilla. Monster X still gets, but the problem is that Monster X still gets a really cool part. He has a really nice part here, but likewise, I think for balancing purposes, I'd argue he didn't need to be there. Like, just keep it to Gigan and Megalon, Zilla and Kiru, they fight, and then Orga comes out as the final boss type. And while I'm sure all these a good chunk of these characters may have stories in the future, I think Monster X in particular is somehow going to be revisited. I'm a little confused since he died. I'm sure it'll make sense when it comes, but but it did kind of feel like, when it comes to the monster stuff, I do think that needed to be trimmed. I do think that, I think really it should have just been Gigan and Megalon's the dragon to Orga's, brutish big boss finale. And I think that would have been enough. At least on the monster side of the spectrum. On the human side of the spectrum, likewise, the only thing that really bugged me was the death of X. His death came in before Orga emerged, thus rendering the whole, aside from getting Elsie involved with the plot, it renders the whole merging Orga with M-Base thing entirely pointless. Because it's the whole reason they did it was so X could control it because he is a Kaiser. But with the Kaiser preemptively killed before Orga even shows up, it didn't live up to its fullest potential and sort of missed the mark in that area. So those are my two biggest those are my two biggest criticisms to the match, story-wise. I think the other real big issue that sort of took it out for me was just all the little stuff, like certain punctuation marks are missing in a bunch of areas, so this is going to make this even more of a pain to edit when we get to the HD-ified version of this, because it's like...
I'll be helping with that.
Okay, cool. You mean you'll be doing that?
Yeah, my match is like that.
Right. So it's like, there are a lot of punctuation marks that are misused or not, or just completely missing outright. Some of them seem to be swapped, and I'm like, huh? Why are they? And even this is even after the revision, after the first version, had more issues that were fixed in post.
Oh yeah.
So there's that. But friggin', I do think all around, and then everything else just kind of comes. The human side just kind of comes from it's going to be hit or miss depending on how you view a lot of the characters, especially like the Heat team. It's like, I know that could be a little decisive around here. It's like, I don't think this match will do anything for non-GTS fans, and for the people that do like it, it's like, nah, it's fine. And yeah, I think I'm trying to think of anything else that just trying to think of anything else, because I think I do like even if it wasn't too much deep characterization or whatever, everyone still serves their function fine. I think the story moves along and changes things up nicely. It's just more around the end where its issues come to rise, and it's mostly just the way the Kaiser was sort of handled, or the way the manner of his death was handled. Had that been later, I think we would have been alright. But yeah, other than that though, I don't mind, aside from the grammar misgrievances, I do not mind what match 164. It is fine, though a little stilted and clunky. That's another thing I will notice, that some of the dialogue parts and some of the actual writing come off a little clunky. So, and I think I may have said something very similar with match, I want to say 146 or 137, one of the two.
I think it's 146.
May have been 146,
Yeah.
So, but otherwise... But yeah, no, other than that, though, it's like, I do not, I think this has come to an end of making fun of 164 as, the worst thing ever. It really isn't, but it definitely has its flaws, and it's definitely clunky, but it's not bad.
Still.
Yeah. Anyway. So, okay.
As someone that's diametrically opposed, I'll hold off on my note. John Wayne, what are your thoughts?
Oh, shouldn't it be?
Oh, yeah,
John
I was about
Wayne?
to say, going from mostly from the top.
skipping-
Joe, what'd you think?
I'll go.
Well, I feel exhausted.
I don't blame you, man. You were with us with the start of this thing.
The dialogue, as Kaijuek said, it's clunky. That's putting it a little lightly for me. Like Kaijuek said, it's not the worst thing ever, but for this huge, the longest match for a while, I think it is definitely weak. There are good moments, and there are also, there are plenty of good moments, but there are also plenty of bad moments that just kind of take me out. And the plentiful typos also brought me out. Still not awful. Still not the worst thing ever. But I would give it a 6 out of 10. Closer to a 5 than a 7.
Damn. Yeah, pretty much Kaiju X and Joe have said my thoughts. I've found this to be very exhausting, especially when you're not a fan of the Zilla series. As someone who loves character and dialogue, I found this to be kind of hard to sit through. I didn't really, like I said, I felt that the dialogue was kind of wonky, like even kind of annoying at times. Like Randy.
Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky. I mean, the stuff with Akane was decent. I just wish you didn't kill her off since she was the best character. I still wouldn't say I still wouldn't say I
She could always come back.
enjoy it, but it yeah, it's not the worst thing. I mean, I'd still rather take this over any match. Because I know there's at least effort put into
with the exception of the one good one.
Perhaps.
We'll see when we get there.
Yeah, I felt like it could have been structured better. Again, like flipping X and Orga around. Yeah, and I feel like the monsters weren't used as like balanced well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like this could have.
Oh yeah, I was also expecting Megalon to come back at some point. Until X just said, "Oh, he's dead."
I just kind of assumed, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll give this like a best I can do is like a 5.
Damn.
I think. I don't know. I just feel exhausted.
You weren't even.
I feel like I just watched.
Oh, go ahead.
I feel like I just watched a Bayformers movie.
That's pretty apt, I guess. Did you have?
Were you standing under Megalon's balls, Joe?
Did you say Megalon's balls?
Yeah, were you standing beneath Megalon's balls?
Oh yeah.
He was standing beneath Megalon's balls underground. It was pretty deep.
You could say he's balls deep.
Hey, Nagoda, what'd you think of match 164?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Is this working?
you can.
Okay, good. I have the microphone in. Good. Okay. So, technically, this would be my first reading of this match.
Oh, same.
It was pretty good. Like, I like the dialogue. The fights were kind of nice. It's nice. It's not as bad. But then, from what I remember, when it first came out, the grammar was kind of fixed a lot better on this afterwards. So if we read it back then, it would have been a lot worse off.
Oh lord.
Because didn't you guys do like a lot of fixes
There
to
was
this
a lot
one?
of glitches when the
like
When it got
all those
transferred.
glitching.
Yeah, so what happened was, so fun fact with this was the, again, as everyone keeps saying, the longest match at the time. So Anthony had to break it up into 3 different chunks to then move it over onto the site because it was so large. Because he did that, there were issues where every ... would get like a question mark or something. It was, and I did not know why that it happened, but it happened. There were other errors, like text was big and small and such things. So, I mean, it is a shaky match. But yeah, that's primarily what caused a lot of the other errors, like I remember there were ... dots, question marks, and other like errors all throughout, and people were just like, why is this like this? And I'm like, this isn't in my original match. Release the gray shot cuts.
And we did before we had the chance to read the original. So 0 out of 10.
Oh lord.
0 out of 10 will reread
The
it.
the great shot cut of this video will be 6 hours long.
Oh, lordy.
Wow. Are you done, Nagoda, or?
Oh yeah, I'm done.
Also, I want to mention one more thing. Beautiful banner from Jackson Morris. Holy crap, it is still single-handedly the best element in the match. And likewise,
Yep, I can agree
and I
with
think
that.
likewise, just one of the best banners, period. Without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's just amazing, that banner.
Don't worry, everyone, you'll be seeing Joe's beautiful version real soon.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
You mean they aren't already?
Oh no. But yes, okay, so the main thing about this match is, yes, I do agree it is overly long for what it is. Ports should have been you could trim some portions, and I feel what the biggest problem with this is it's a KWC match kind of second. You have a lot of action with the humans. I mean, you have Nick fighting the group at the news station. You have Monique fighting the 4 agents that invade the key headquarters. So there are moments of action. It's just not a KWC kind of action. It builds up to like the main event at the end. And frankly, the first part with Megalon and Zilla is not a good fight. It's probably one of the worst fights I've ever written.
No, I don't think. I actually found the Zilla versus Megalon fight fine. Like, it's not crazy, but it's fine.
For me, it's kind of, when I look back on it, I'm just like, eh. The Gigan fight is better. Again, it's an improvement. I think the first act of this mainly suffers from, I'd agree, like the dialogue and such, and again, it's very slow on the pace. It's like if you notice matches now, right? Like if you look at KWC like 200, for instance, it goes back and forth between the humans and the monster action for the most part. So it's like split 50-50. This is kind of like 70-30 or 75-25, which I don't think helps with the pace when it comes to like the movement. Because when like Gigan versus Kiryu or Monster X versus Zilla does happen, it picks up considerably in regards to like oh, okay, now this match has some life again. Because I don't think the human action is that good. The other human elements like Mendel and like the comments with like Randy and stuff, they're good and entertaining, but they are. There's too much of it in this. Akane, Kiryu, and Monster X were all my favorite parts of this, and when I went back and did like, I remember I went back and like I think I fixed, but when it originally was posted to the site, I updated Monster X's portion specifically because his fight was actually relatively short. It was really one fight with Zilla, and then Kiryu came in. So I kind of expanded it, and I also had him survive the Absolute Zero cannon by like getting just like dodging it slightly, having half his body frozen, kind of like Orga. So that way he could like come back later. I also I would tend to agree that Megalon is kind of wasted material. Gigan is also kind of wasted in this. Monster X gets some time to shine. Orga gets some time to shine. I think Zilla and Kiryu also get some good moments. Zilla using his brains against Monster X more so than his brawn or anything, because in a straight up fight, as in this match, he gets absolutely thrashed. Like he does not stand a chance against him. So that I kind of wanted to make more clear, especially after 146, where Zilla was like tangling with the Gauss and whatnot. It was doing, basically on equal footing. And this is when I wanted to showcase, even with Megalon, he's on the back foot. Monster X is just too much for him to overcome. So overall, some clunky dialogue. For what the plot is, it is overly long. But I think once you get into like the first act is like the worst by far. And it was slow, just rereading it. The second one was better. The second act was better, and the third act ends really strong. I really enjoyed the third act of this more so than I thought I was going to. With the comments with Zilla, but the moment Zilla and Kiryu share, at least the ghost the Zilla that inhabited Kiryu. Like they share Akane's moment with Susumu. Like there's a lot of nice little moments like that that really helps us. And I forgot about the ending with Nick. The Nick ending I really enjoyed writing. And it's kind of teased throughout with like him kind of like being, you know, the last event being like kind of sticking with him more so than like other, like most things. Like he shakes off most things, but now this one kind of stuck with him, and he's like, okay, I can lose, you know, there's a chance I could lose people. Oh God, like, you know, and that kind of drives his motivations in this. So yeah, overall, not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. After years of everyone saying this is the worst match in the KWC by a long shot, I'm happily surprised that it is not that. It's not my best work, I'll say that easily, and it does have its fair share of problems. But I do agree. I think I'd give this like a 6 out of 10. With the ending in particular, like the last third, probably being an 8 out of 10. With the first being like a 4 out of 10, and the middle being like a 6 out of 10. It kind of balances itself out. The only last thing I can say is in regards to the Orga criticism, that was noting that the Kaiser could control him, which he could. The only problem is no one knew that X left because he's an arrogant juvenile prick that wouldn't tell anyone where he's going, and no one would dare ask him where he's going for threat of death.
Right.
So the note of him being controlled and then X dying is not part of the plan.
Right. I do get that, but I think I get that it's like the man kind of goes off on his own tangent and does his own thing, but that's clearly much more of like you set up Kaiser-controlled Orga and don't do anything with it. Like, it's fine to have Kaiser do his own thing, going on a tangent and, you know, battling the humans. Maybe after they awaken Orga. It's like, okay, I have this monster under my control. Now I'm going to go beat the shit out of humans because I want to. So.
Yeah. Well, it's also noted that he thinks that Ozaki is there. Ozakai. Yeah. But he's, you know, because they're like, oh, someone snuck in. Has to be Ozaki.
Ozaki,
yeah. Oh, yeah, Ozaki. Which, fun fact, in the original script for this, I actually had planned on him arriving with the Gotengo as well. But I decided to save them for a later arc. Because I was like, there's too much in this already. There's too many characters, there's too many things. And that's my biggest recommendation for anyone that's making a match. Simplify it. If you notice like 200, 275, the motivations, characters, it's way more simple to follow than what's going on here.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest lesson on this one. It was keep things simple, stupid. And that is what I would recommend for anyone that's doing a match like this. And I think it's a problem that can... It's a double-edged sword, right? You need to keep the story simple and keep the characters like reduced and whatnot, but at the same time be able to like switch back and forth with different things and have it always interesting. It's, you know, it's a balance. This one at the end manages it, but at the beginning it definitely does not. Were there any other fun facts or anything for this one? This was the after this. Obviously, this is continued, but I had planned on something going after this in another direction. But then I was kind of like, after the reaction and whatnot, I was kind of like, I'm just gonna go with like the Cameron Winter kind of idea, and that's where the next arc kind of takes. And then and also with this, I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to build it up and ensure, you know, 200 isn't as long. And it ended up being 30. Yeah, it ended up being the next longest match. So, you know.
Oh, circumstance, how hilarious you be. And then it's like, oh, maybe, Kaiju X, you have this great match that I could team up with you with. Let's take it in this direction. I was like, okay. And then we get the match 275, be like, you don't need to make it longer. Turns out to be longer.
Yeah. But yeah, otherwise I'm happy this wasn't as bad as it was, but it's not as good as I hoped. So yeah, overall 164. I guess the tagline of this video is it's not the worst, but it's not the best thing ever either.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, Jackson Morris's banner is fantastic, and he's the best thing of this match.
So
next to the Kiryu, the final the final Kiryu moment. I love that final moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. No. That send off for Kiryu was really nice. First appearance anyway.
And actually, you did make note. If I were to do, if I were to continue any of the plot lines with this, I would have. I do have an idea of a match with Akane and Kiryu to have them back again, and I have an idea with
how you blew
What,
him
how?
up.
Oh, so
Akane, you could at least make the excuse that Kiryu was able to get her ejected.
Okay, that
she's dead. She was inside of Kiryu. She was piloting him, like helping her. So no, she's dead. But I think I might have her back for a match.
Oh wait, no, I get it. Never mind.
Oh, and before you ask, no, not time travel.
Wait, then how?
Alternate dimension.
That would be giving away the spoilers, wouldn't it?
Gosh,
Actually, does Akane appear in 200?
did she?
Didn't I have Akane appear in 200? Hold on, I need to check real quick.
Great job broke his own timeline.
No, I did not. I removed that section, right? So you guys don't know. Okay, cool.
Oh, okay.
Again, multiverse.
Nope. She just same character.
Flashback.
Nope. Sequel.
How?
How?
Clone.
I mean,
Owns.
no. I mean, come on. She's dead. You don't clone the.
Ghost.
Why would you bring that?
She's a
person back
ghost.
dead? No, same character. I mean, that'd be kind of weird, though. How would Kiryu fight as a ghost? Yeah, that's
Sex
just that,
doll.
no, that's just crazy. Come on, guys. Yeah, but in any case, I do have an idea with that, and in regards to how I would bring Monster X back, I because I will say he's a very entertaining monster. Who knows? Maybe Orga didn't chew his food. Could be as simple as that.
Bring Megalon back. Hashtag justice for Megalon.
No, I'll be honest. Megalon is the least entertaining monster because I hate writing dumb monster fights. Dumb monster fights are not entertaining for me because it's just swing, hit, It's like brutes. I don't like brutes. I like smart fighters or those with least abilities. Megalon is dumb, and I don't like him.
You're gonna give him a story arc where he gets a brain.
Nah. He did live this. You could just imagine him. He just went back to Seatopia.
Great shot. Let's co-write a Megalon match.
Joe will force
Listen,
Megalon in there.
Listen, you know it's bad when I have I have a series planned and he's never mentioned again. You know, that's the sign of how much I did not want to write him. I added Megalon because I'm like, I need a monster at the beginning for Zilla to fight. That way to have a little bit of action in the beginning. I can use Megalon. He's always with Gigan. Okay, that works. That's literally the main reason I included him.
Yeah.
Gigan, I was like, oh yeah, I could do like clashes with like Kiryu with the electric sword. Like it'll be like a kind of clash. Yeah, that was cool. Megalon, you could do that, but I'm like, he's too dumb. He'd like block it, and then he'd kind of like, I don't think he'd understand the premise. He'd think patty cake maybe. But no, yeah. Regardless, yeah. I would probably bring back Kiryu and Akane and Monster X for if I were to bring back any monsters in this series. I mean, I've obviously brought back Zilla. I'm not bringing back Orga. He's just the final boss. Oh, actually, one thing I will say before I finish this, and that's in regards to the Tom series. So, as you all may know, Tom wrote Zilla and Kiryu versus Orga. And I literally was like, you've got to be shitting me. I wrote this match. I had to send to Titano again because the same thing happened. Because I wrote 137?
Yes.
And that one I thought was super close in regards to its plot to the one where Monster X and Orga fight Junior, Godzilla Heisei, and Rodan.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh god, they're gonna think I did it again. I just copied Tom.
Well, 195 was Kenneth James, not Tom.
I know, but they're gonna think, oh, I copied another match idea.
Right. Okay.
And this time it was Tom because I just added 2 extra monsters and or 3 extra monsters and called it a day.
It's like, oh god, it literally
Hey.
is the second Heat story. The second one that involves Orca is the final boss. I was just like, I'm so screwed.
You guys hear the dogs barking on my end? Or is...
Nope.
Oh, noise suppression is... Why is it so good now? All the other times it's... Here's everything.
Sometimes it just turns it off. I don't know. Whew. But yeah,
It's a good thing you guys didn't hear all the dogs barking because they were loud.
yeah, no, I can only hear him now when you're talking now, but otherwise, nah. So, but yeah, with that said, whew, I guess, does anyone else have any additional thoughts to say with 164? Or?
It's a good sleeping pill.
It's better than 264. I know that one now. I can read this and be like, okay, 264 is now the worst 64.
But to be fair, 164 was the beginning of one of the worst years in America. That was 2016, until 2020 came along.
Yeah.
Wait, it was what?
This match was the foreshadowing of how bad 2016 was going to be.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're not. Wow. Oh gosh, I can't escape it. I can't escape it.
Was this released in 2016?
Yes, it was the first match of 2016.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh no.
I don't know. What was the first match of 2020?
Wasn't it Anguirus versus Anguirus?
King Kong versus your mom.
I think a 281.
I think it was the Angerous one.
The Angerous
Oh wow.
fight.
So what do we do about that one? Because that one's really good, and the year ended up being real shit. So like, what's the balance there? Did it suck all the good out of the year? Kaiju X, stop it. No more matches for you.
That's maybe that's what happened. Maybe Anguirus versus Anguirus was so good. It was also the only year to feature 2001 Anguirus. So yeah, maybe he did suck all the good out of it. Like he was storing it for the coming months. I have to get it out of him.
Wait. The match was in snow, right?
Yes.
That was the calm before the storm.
Damn.
Oh, that's great. Or either that or Tsunai Kusagami destroying Ganymus released Yogg. If you know what I mean.
Damn.
Anyway. And I surmise that's everything we really want to say for match 164, I assume.
Yep, that's everything I got.
And okay, with that said, this has been our reading of match 164, and we will see you all next time for the next season of the Committee Reads. Will we be back? I don't know. See you later.
Maybe.
Bye.
Later.
Pee pee poo poo.
Gosh darn it.